7 o'clock. We're going to start the city council meeting, and today is Tuesday, October 22nd of 2024. And the first item of business would be the roll call.
Okay, Lagaki.
Here.
Caravello.
Here.
Bosniak Scanlon.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Reeves.
Here.
Majewski.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Hirsch.
Here.
Peyton.
Present.
And Sherlucky.
I made it. I'm here.
Yay, we have 12 alders present.
All right, thank you very much. And we are certified compliance with open meeting laws. We do have a need for a public hearing tonight. So we'll close the meeting right after we start it, and then we'll open for the public hearing. I had nobody signed up to speak. Is there anybody here?
What is it about?
The public hearing is regarding the SPI to divide lots 2 and 3 and outlet 1 DSM out on 51 in Highway B. Is there anybody here that wanted to speak on that issue for the public hearing? Hearing none, seeing none. So we'll close that and then we'll just reopen for our normal order of business here. And the first item would be the public comment period, and I did not have anyone signed up for public comment. I did receive an email from the last meeting where somebody had hoped to speak, but they did not. And basically, they were speaking in support of the direction that the Opera House went. And, you know, they had been to a show and really talked about how they value what we have here. So I wanted to share that with you, but I did not have anyone signed up speak at public comment here tonight. So we'll go into our communications and presentations. And we'll start out with Alder Schumacher.
Let's give it to Patrick first. He's got one.
Very, very quickly and totally partisan because my son is a senior. Stoughton was 7-2 in football. They have their home playoff game this Friday. So if you want, come out and cheer them on.
All right, thank you for that. Congratulations. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We've been waiting for 2 weeks.
I was thrown through on you know, some of the history here. Stoughton was originally surveyed here in 1833 and described initially as thinly timbered in fir, white, and yellow oak, and a strip of timber dividing the prairie along the river. Luke Stoughton had bought his land here in about 1847-ish. Saw the possibilities for farming and as well as the river, utilizing the river, which at the time was named the Catfish River originally, and then the Yahara River name change in 1855. He saw the potential to put the sawmills and grist mills and that along the river and started developing some of the industry in there. E.G. Mant built the wagon work factory in here, and by 1883 had employed up to 225 people. But then a fire in that year had destroyed a lot for building. There was also another year at which wheat had been regularly planted. There was one, I believe it was a drought, that had knocked out that wheat crop, and they had changed over to tobacco. So starting up into the tobacco industry and building up the warehouses, and some of which you can still see downtown, yeah. And was staffed a lot by the immigration in from Norway. So a lot of the foundations in there for a lot of our festivals and traditions that we uphold today.
All right, thank you.
Sounds like a third grade history lesson.
We'll actually tested on this, probably. And I want to get a quick update, Candy, if you want, on the elections.
Sure. So in-person voting started today. It was incredibly busy. We had a line down the steps outside City Hall by 7:45. We pretty much had lines throughout the day. We issued somewhere in between 375 to 400 absentee ballots today. The WIS vote system worked until about 2 o'clock, and then it was overloaded with all the activity. So then we had to hand issue ballots to people until 4:30. So doing it the old way. So we will have in-person absentee voting the rest of this week, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. to noon, and then next week, Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Friday, November 1st, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So everyone's welcome to come join the lines. We're getting through them pretty quickly. We have about 3 computers issuing absentee ballots, so that's where we're
Thank you.
at. I don't have a report, I'm sorry, on how many absentees have been issued by mail and how many have been returned. I just couldn't pull that out of the system today, so.
Sure. Thank you for that. I know I saw a couple familiar faces, but not permanent. Is at City Hall today? So I think you had some volunteers there.
We did. We had some volunteers that were helping us because, the overseas requests are coming in, everything else is still happening. So it has really helped to have the volunteers issuing ballots for us.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Hopefully we sleep well tonight. All right. Before we go on to the agenda, I just wanted to acknowledge that tonight is President Reeves' last meeting as a council member. So I want to thank you for all your work. And I would invite others to join if they want to say a few words. Go ahead.
I guess I'm really saddened that you're moving to my district. But I just want to say that I really appreciate all your time and effort that you put into everything. You're one of the, council members over the years that I must say that has really looked things completely through and have amazing questions, and you follow through and do outside work that I know for myself and don't have the time or the energy to do. So I really appreciate all your extra time and effort into making this council run efficiently and is well informed, and your questions and your thoroughness are going to be greatly missed.
Thank you. Anyone else? You want a roaster? Feel
No.
free. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks.
Well, I don't want to get emotional, but it's been my pleasure.
Good for you for getting emotional. I wanted to thank you. I was at a Christmas party and thought maybe I'll do political stuff again in my retirement. And Lisa just sort of talked about the need and hope that we could gain even more diverse voices. I appreciated that invitation. And Jill and I talked long and hard about it. And it's been a very, very good 6 years for me. And so thank you for that invitation.
Twisting your arm, but
And you're not moving.
Yeah, but my term's up.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. We'll get into the agenda here. We're going to have a presentation from Stoughton Utilities, and I'll try to cue this up best as I can. And that's what you're hoping to see?
That is, yes.
Okay.
That's what I have in front of
All right.
me. Okay, so we have our 2025 budget to share with you tonight. This did go before our utilities committee last week, Thursday. It was passed unanimously. So tonight is our presentation to you, and then the official passing of it will occur with your general levy budget, I believe, on the 12th. So jump right in. It's important to note all of the budget assumptions that we made in making this budget. Number one, we are assuming that our usage is going to be declining for electric, water, and sewer users. We will anticipate we might see an increase in usage at the end of 2024. However, we have some information from our some of our large electric and water consumers that they're going to be tailoring down their usage 2025 and beyond. So it was necessary for us to estimate a decline in revenues usage across all three utilities, 25 and in the future. For expenses, estimating those went off of a 3-year average where it was appropriate adjustments were made, but overall, the average or the expenses were based off that average. The biggest one we saw this we'll see in 25 is health insurance. I think it's really 9.9%. I think was the last number I heard. Stuck with the 10%. So you'll see that across all the utilities as well as a flag that cost is increased. Aggressive replacement plan of all three utilities continues. We talked about this last year. That is moving forward again in 25, 26, 27, 29, and beyond. The rate of return. So what we are authorized for our return by the Public Service Commission, we assume the 6.2% rate of return. That is what it is currently. Last year, when we had this conversation, the authorized rate of return was 4.9%. That does change things quite a bit, and we'll see that on the water rate increase that we have projected in 25. That number is out of our control. That's the Public Service Commission set. So as that number goes up and down, it will change our forecast 25 and beyond. But for the purpose of this 5-year lookout, we use the 6.2%. Also, we did make an assumption that in 2026, we would be building a new building. We had a cost in there of $22 million. That is just what a utility that we are aware of as building a building. That was the number that they had. We pulled it out of the sky and said, we'll go with that. In 2025, we did move $500,000 from that $22 million into 2025. The other $21.5 million is sitting in 2026. The adjustment was made for 25 simply for design engineering costs that we would need to do in 25 should the building go forward in 26. Also, we do currently have 2 water operators that we budgeted for in 2024. One of the positions was filled partially. We had someone in there. That person moved on in employment. We have recently filled that. We didn't have a full year of that position. But we did have another water operator position that was not filled at all. So in 2025, we're going to keep that position, but transform it over to an apprentice meter technician position. We have a lot of testing needs going on in our water and electric department. So it would make sense for us to have this position rather than the water operator position. Moving on, in 2025, we have budgeted for wages for 3% across the board for all staff. This does match, I believe, what the city is proposing for their wages, and I believe Jen has some notes that she will share with that philosophy as well.
Good deal. No, I very much believe in fair market compensation. And actually, when we looked at this budget, really it initially went through doing another market analysis, but we kind of talked to Matt and decided to go with 3% this year. But what we have included in the budget is a compensation review, as well as looking at a policy. Ultimately, the purpose of how we look at compensation is to what's the market, not through the market, not trail the market, be at market. A number of reasons for this is ultimately it allows us to retain our staff, but it also allows us to recruit new staff. And when we actually recruit staff, then we're not looking at compensation again to make sure that we're paid fairly. We operate even so as we talked about those operator positions. I'm a big believer in being very efficient and only filling vacancies when they need to fill. We actually carried that water operator vacancies for a couple of years now with the idea that, when I look at our needs of our water department, they weren't there. We kept them in the budget just in case I ended up being wrong in that, but also wanted to just make sure that we were moving in the right direction. We're finding that we don't need those operator positions. We just need the one, not the second. Right now, with the metering needs that we have, that's what we're looking to fill, the apprentice meter technician. So in 2025, you do have a 3% across the board. I think the one thing too with fair market compensation to always kind of consider is that does not mean that we would be doing more than, it's really coming down to what is that percentage that should be for that specific position based on what the market looks like. And for the longest time, we talked about linemen, and they're very hard to come by, and recruiting is very challenging. We're finding that wastewater is even more challenging than it has been for linemen. And I think that trend will continue, and so inherently those wages will likely go up faster than potentially our linemen. So in 2026, we've got money budgeted to actually have a third party come in, do a compensation review, and then to set a policy ultimately that we would bring before Utilities Committee, Personnel, and City Council for approval. And then going forward, we'd be able to then, have those wages set for budget.
So jumping into a lot of numbers, this first slide, this is just very brief, high-level overview, all across all three utilities, revenues, expenses, and net income. So we're looking for revenues 22.5 million, all encompassing, expenses about 20.8 million, leading a net income about 1.6 million for over all three utilities. 2025. This slide, sorry about that. This slide, the purpose I wanted to put this in here is we have a number of staff that work for all three utilities. Now we have to assign our time based on the work that we're doing, not necessarily how it's budgeted. So I wanted to show, because it gets a little wonky when we look at all these electric, water, and sewer wages moving forward. But if we look at this wages line item here, kind of in the middle of the page, we're looking at $2.1 million in 2025. And we're estimating at the end of 2024, we're going to have $1.9 million will actually be our wage cost. Again, we didn't fill some of the positions we had budgeted for. So it's showing that we're going to have like a 9% increase in wages. If we look at the 2024 budget, we were like $2,080,000. So if you compare those two numbers, our wages are estimated to be about 2.3% over and above what was budgeted in 2024 as a total. That varies from the 3% because we do capitalize some of our labor with projects that our electric crew does, either goes to plant or it's paid for by developers. And also in total, we have our capital projects overall in 2025, we're looking that we're going to spend about $3.8 million. It's down a little bit from 2024, but if we look back in history, that still is very aggressive and also utilities looking forward. Jumping right into electric, and what I'll do here is just highlight the different categories and what's driving the higher percentage increases for each of those categories where noted. So here on this slide, we're seeing, this is revenues, excuse me. We do not have a planned electric rate increase for 2025, but we do see an increase in revenues, and that is because we are estimating our purchase power costs are going to go up. So you all have your electric bill, there's a PCAC line item on there that's tied directly to our power costs. So as the power costs go up, that PCAC goes up, which in turn provides more revenue so we can pay the power bill. So that's the reason for the increase here. We do have a little bit of an increase in our other costs. That's for a pole contact. We get a slight increase every year for that. But overall, kind of smooth sailing from 2024. Expense-wise, on the electric side, transmission and distribution costs, my little blue percentage change number there says it's going to go up 15.5%. I'm actually estimating that in 2024, it's going to be a little bit lower than what we had spent in prior years. I'm bumping that back up in 2025 because that's where it's going to be. In addition, we have some tree trimming efforts that we really need to stay on top of that we may have been not getting to because we've been so busy with other projects in 24. So making sure we have enough funds in there, continue that effort in 25. Administrative in general, we've got a 10.4% increase there. That's largely driven by the health insurance increase for our staff. Also included in there, as Jill mentioned, is a compensation study, and we also have a distribution study that we're planning for our electric in 25 as well. Overall, the capital projects, in 24, we're estimating we're going to spend about $2.2 million. It's down a little bit in 25, proposed at 1.6, but still high for us to go aggressive on the electric side. Moving on to the next slide, the rate of return. So we have some metrics that we look at, so electric and water utilities, one of them being the rate of return. This tells us how healthy our utility is doing financially. In 2025, we're estimating that our rate of return is going to be 4.31%. Currently, the authorized rate of return is 6.2%. You never totally meet the authorized rate of return of 6.2. You get close to it. So in 2025, we're estimating we're going to be a little over 4%, which is fine. In 26, we do anticipate that we're going to have a rate increase that is going to be tied to that building debt that's going to be taken out. So we're looking to bump back up in 26 once that rate increase comes forward. I'm sorry, this is so fuzzy. So in 2026, we do have the 8% rate increase that I just mentioned. That is largely tied to the building debt that we plan to issue. Electric share of this debt is about $11.8 million. That is what that debt would be issued for in 2026. And then in 2028, we are also anticipating that we'll need an inflationary increase of 2.75% on the electric side. But the building debt would be the only debt that would be issued in the electric in the next 5 years. The next metric that we look at is our debt coverage. This is the amount of earnings we need to have on hand to meet the obligations of our debt. We are required to have 1.3. We are sitting fine on the electric part. Electric utility will meet that, in 2025, and I don't see any concerns with us meeting that one through 2029 either. So on the electric side, all of those metrics that we look at, the debt coverage, the rate of return, and the cash on hand all look good. That's very, very high overview, but are there any questions on electric? Anything that stood out that I didn't talk about? All right, let's keep rolling. Water. So last year when we came before you, we had said that we were going to have a simplified rate case increase of 8% on the water side in 2024, and then 9% in 2025. If you recall, when we brought our audit for you here just a few months ago, I said we would not be eligible for the 8% increase in 2024 because our rate of return was high in 23. So what that does is that our rate increase for 2025 then increases. So instead of the 9% that we were estimating in 2025, it would compound to 17%. And then with that rate of return increasing from 4.9 to 6.2, it bumps it up to 23%. So that is the rate increase that we are looking for in 2025. Now, ultimately, this is set by the Public Service Commission, but the application that I have filled out, I think it's 20.78%, is what we would be applying for in 25. That works out to be about $5.61 a month for our average residential customer in 25. So when we look out for the revenues on the water side, not every category is going to go up these percentages. That will be determined by the Public Service Commission. But for my forecasting purposes, we just set across the board 23%, and then here's all of these categories up. So for this purpose here, it's showing that every customer category is going up, give or take 23% in revenue. And then we have, does that make sense? I know that's very different than what we talked about here.
Can you just touch on what is the reason for the rate increases? I mean, that is a big jump, and I think the public probably was curious to know what's driving it all of a sudden a 23%. And you're only asking for.
We go, well, the 23% is really compounding the 2 years. That's really what's going on there.
Right.
But the reason that we were looking for continued rate increases, last year we had this conversation was going to be 8 and 9, has to do with our capital project. Every time we add more plants to our book, that increases our net rate base that our rate of return is based off of. There in turn, when we go in for a rate increase, that bumps up the amount of dollars that we get back, but back into our plant. So as we continue to replace our infrastructure, it's great for us and it's our incentive. Public Service Commission incentivizes us that way. Continue putting dollars back into your plant. You get more back in your rate of return, put right back into your plant. So the more aggressive that we have this replacement plan, the more it's driving up those rate increases.
Yeah, so just to further clarify, so you're required when you raise a rate, and I don't know if it's just for water or other utilities, to reinvest a certain percentage of that. It's not just money that you have discretion on every dollar, correct? You have to reinvest a certain amount. Maybe you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, so the Public Service Commission, that rate of return that we get, the Public Service Commission doesn't, you don't have to prove them how you spend the dollars. However, if you spend it on things like not putting money back into your plant, they're not going to give you any more out. So the return that we get is there so that we have the interest to pay on our debt. So when we issue debt, it's there to make our interest payments, our debt payments, and it's also there to reinvest back into our infrastructure. Does that make sense? So it's not, I know rate of return, it says, well, we're not for profit. How are you earning this return? The whole point of that is that we are continuing to put dollars back into our plant, maintaining our infrastructure for the betterment of our customers.
I think that's helpful for people to understand that you're reinvesting some of that in infrastructure, especially when we're hearing so much about cities that maybe aren't. Yeah. So
and we have aging infrastructure, right? I mean, you've been hearing this and you hear this to other communities as well. So as some of these pipes begin to fail, we have the obligation to maintain that so our customers have water, they have sewer, right, to maintain the line so they have electric. We need to catch up a little bit as well. So last year when we talked about the rate increases, we said we have a lot to replace. And on your streets projects, you have a lot of streets replacing, which is our best time to get in there because you're ripping up the road and we don't have to dig up your brand new road and we have a water main break. So that is also driving as those streets are getting replaced. It's also our opportunity to get in there, replace the water main and the sewer main as well. So we were in this, it's just that we're kind of combining 2 years into one in 2025 on the water rate increase. We're hoping to smooth that out a little bit. In 24 with that simplified, we just did better than we thought we were going to do. Thank you. Anything else? All right. So expenses on the water side. Of course, what stands out the most is the pumping change of 96.6%. That is because we are rehabbing well 7. Thank you. 7 in 2025. That's about $100,000, which doubles that line item. So that's why that looks really high there.
Could that be considered a capital maintenance?
It's not. No. I like what you think. Yes. There's some expense, capital maintenance items like a new roof on the building. You think you'd be able to capitalize that, and rehabbing the well, you can't. But if we have like a large pump that has to be replaced that we discover when we're doing this, like, oh, that $13,000 pump now has to be replaced, that we can capitalize. But overall, we put this in expense because most of it is expense. There could be some as the project moves on that we can capitalize. Most of it, probably not. So we leave it in the expense bucket here.
Yes, you will.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Transmission and distribution. Go back. Thank you. We have an increase there of 26.6%. Jill is going to touch on this for the CIP, but we are changing to some AMI meters and electric and water that will require some training for our staff. These are new meters for them. So we do have dollars in this line item to train them how to use that. And that's what's bumping this up. The administrative and general line item, we do have, again, the 10% increase in health insurance. And then we also are budgeting for full benefits for that meter apprentice position that Jill talked about earlier. And then again, going back to our plans, we have, even though we're looking at a decrease in 2025 of 32%, it still is very aggressive. So comparing that to 2021, we had $1.5 million on our capital projects, and that included the lead service replacement program. So in 2025, we're looking at $1.2 million of capital projects that we plan to complete. Moving on, our rate of return on the water. So with the planned 23% increase, again, they authorize a 6.2%. We'll see what happens. I'm planning 6%. You don't ever get as close to 6.2, but that's the ballpark we're going to be in. And then looking out into the future, 26, 27, 28, 29, we are looking at, page here, excuse me. We're looking at a rate increase in 2027 of 17%. That's going to bump up our rate of return. And then in 29, we also have an estimated rate increase to give us back that 6.2%. Again, assuming none of that change.
What are taxes?
Taxes. That is FICA, Medicare.
FICA, got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Looks a little small from your pilot, huh? Okay. Unrestricted cash on hand. Our goal for all three utilities is to have 5 to 6 months. That's what we aim for. We don't always meet that, but that is what we aim for. And that's really because if something breaks, if the water main, all of a sudden we've got a stretch of road that breaks or one of our transformers go down, we have to act quickly. So having dollars on hand to be able to do that for us. So our target is 5 to 6 months. Like I said, as we try and get as close as we can for all three utilities. As I said, in 2025, we have a 23% rate increase planned. In 26, we have a debt issuance. Part of that is for the building. The other part of that is for capital projects that we have planned for the DOT project that's going to be done out here on Highway 51. In 27, we're looking at a 17%. That's largely tied to the building, should that occur in 2026. And then in 29, a 10% increase to get us back up to that rate of return. But looking forward, 26, 27, 29, we use this as a roadmap for us. None of this is really in stone. What we're really looking for in stone is 2025. So this can change next year when I come back here. So this is our plan as of now. And then our debt coverage metric on the water utility, assuming we issue the debt that is 1.54, our required is 1.3. We will easily meet that on the water side of 2025 and projecting forward. Any other questions on the water utility? Okay. Wastewater. So last year on the wastewater, I think we had budgeted 8% for a rate increase in 2025. That is staying the same. I will be starting this sewer rate case here soon. I suspect that the rate case is going to tell me it should be a little bit higher than 8%, but because we're having that 23% in water, I kind of wanted to maybe lay off a little bit in wastewater to kind of even it out for our customers. But I would report back to you when I actually have that sewer rate case completed. So across all the customer categories, I'm just showing 8% overall increase for all customers. That is looking to be about $2.65 for the average residential customer in 2025. We're also showing a slight decrease on our other revenues for our VODs and suspended solids. Our industrial customers are sending less our way, which means we charge them less. So we're continuing to show a decline in that revenue category. Notable expenses here on the wastewater side. One thing I did adjust the customer accounting collection, and we're estimating in 2024 to be about $46,000. Friends are telling me that that's just going to be an anomaly year, so I did bump that back up what we've been seeing. So it's kind of increasing that percentage to 18.9%. If you look at the budgeted amount in 24, it's not that large of an increase. And administrative in general, again, the 12% increase that has to do with our health insurance costs. And then our capital projects are going to be down a little bit or quite a bit in 2025, out of $972,000. But again, historically, that is a lot of money for our sewers to be taking on in 2025. All right, moving on. Operating income, so the wastewater utility does not have a rate of return. It's not regulated by the Public Service Commission. It's regulated by you folks. So we don't look at that metric on the wastewater side. In 2025, we're looking at income of $307,000. As we start to look out in the future, you see that number jumps very dramatically up to $1.2 million. That does become important because in 2030 and on, we do have more debt needs in the wastewater utility. And we need that those revenues to sustain our debt coverage because that starts to get a little wonky. But as I said, anything 26 and beyond is not in stone at this time. We're really focusing on 25, but as of now, all things stay. That's what we'd be looking at. Unrestricted cash on hand on in the wastewater utility. The only one that gets a little out of whack is 2026. We're just under 3 months there, but we should rebound again in 2027, so it's not a concern. We do have a couple of rate increases planned, 26 and 27 of 20% back to back. That is in 26, that is tied, I should say largely, that is tied to the building. And then 2027, we have a project in there that I didn't have on my radar last year when we did this forecast. That is bumping that up. In addition, in 26, we have the building debt and then also the DOT project again. That debt issuance is in 26. In 27, we have another debt issuance planned for more wastewater projects. And then again in 29 for further improvements on the water. Any questions on that? And then our debt coverage on the wastewater, assuming that we make all of those debt issuances that we have presented here tonight, 1.1 is our coverage factor for the debt. We will be fine in 25 and beyond on the wastewater side to meet that, make sure we're in compliance. Any other questions on wastewater or water or electric? Okay, so now that we've talked about the rate increases, I want to show just some quick graphs about where we will sit compared to surrounding utilities in reference to our rates. This I did not put together. WPPI put this together. I just stole it from them. But I wanted to show that our electric rates were 96.58 for the average residential customer of 750 kilowatts. The next closest utility, we are 21.2% lower than them. So this is IOU. They've got a mass IOU 4 here. So even with our 10.75% increases that we have planned over the next 5 years in the electric, we will still have competitive rates among the IOUs in our area. So when customers are paying their bill, they can still rest assured they're still getting competitive rates compared to their surrounding area.
Does that assume that the others won't raise their rate?
That is correct. Yep, these are static numbers, so it assumes that no other IOU is going in for a rate increase.
Which is unlikely.
Unlikely.
What does IOU stand for?
Investor-owned utility. Thank you. So we're called the munis. They're called the IOU. Muni being municipal. Water rate comparison. So that first orange line there, that's where we sit right now. With the 23% increase that is planned for 2025, it would bump us down a little bit. And this is smallest to largest here, but we still have plenty of room. So this is comparing Dane County water utilities. Right now, the highest is Cambridge Utility, and it looks like their residential bill is about $77 for 4 units of water. So our customers are now paying, I think it's $24.35 for the same amount of water. So even with our 23% increase in 2025 that we have planned, we're going to bump up a little bit on the list, but we will still be competitive with water utilities in Dane County. And then wastewater is showing, so we're all the way to the left as us currently at 32.92 again for 4 units of water. With the rate increases we have planned in 25 and 26, it bumps us up a little bit. But again, this assumes that these utilities are not going to go in for rate increases, especially on the wastewater side. I very much believe that they will be in for rate increases before we are in 2026. So I think we're going to probably save middle of the road, maybe, the lower end moving forward. But as things sit right now, this is how we would shake out. And then lastly, I just wanted to put together just numbers, more numbers for you. So if we were to say that our 5-year projection is true, it's in stone, at the end of the 5 years, the average residential customer would be paying a total of $49.50 in addition to what they're paying right now per month on their bill. So wanted to make sure that you have that information. These are going to be, we're trying to make these incremental increases as best as we can. But should everything stay that it is right now, should we go forward with our building, we need to issue all these debt, all these capital improvement plan projects. This is what it would look like for our customers at the end of 5 years.
And you said that would be including the new building provide based on the numbers you have right now.
That is correct. And assumes that rate of return that we talked about stays at 6.2%. Any questions on that? Okay. So Jill is now going to take over and just talk about all those capital improvement projects that I talked about. She's going to give you the details on that.
So I do want to highlight the investor-owned facilities. They have shareholders. They are not for profit. Whereas we are not for profit, and so we're able to keep the flow and everything that we actually do take in, we actually send back for our customers and meet their needs. So to start out with a 5-year CIP, to also kind of with some of the rates that we've talked about in the past, and we kind of highlighted this last year. Water, wastewater, we on average for CIP, we're spending about $600,000 each utility. And on the electric side, about 1.2 million or so on the electric side for CIP. What we keep finding is that we just can't keep up. There's too much infrastructure needs, and we need to be able to replace these pipes and have the infrastructure in good condition. The street also, or the city also is doing a lot of street projects. And so it's the best opportunity, like Shannon had highlighted, to really go in there and do that work. We did look at basically last year, we did a big analysis and looked at all of the needs that we have that we know we currently have, so like say water main replacement and sanitary sewer replacement. If we stayed with a $600,000 to $700,000 CIP, we wouldn't touch, we'd get to the last of those known things in 20. So there's no way, unfortunately, for us to manage that. There's, when we actually started to lay them out by priority, when we got to 2067, and we knew for a fact that infrastructure would not last out. So recognizing, really trying to go forward with kind of doubling that, and that's kind of actually put us in a position of being able to replace the known infrastructure that we know has issues today into about 2043 to 2045, depending on how fast we do that. So just some things to consider and kind of why we're looking at, meeting these rate increases to be able to help and support our customers. Otherwise, we've been looking at some, emergency needs that we would have to address to that. So on the electric side, we always look at reliability, both short-term and long-term, and customer satisfaction and engagement. And there's always that opportunity that, as we grow the utility, as we provide to the needs of our utility, provide the needs of our customers, our utility really still needs to be kind of really like an investor owned, but keep our costs down. And so we're constantly looking at different ways in which we engage with our customers so that they have all the information that they need to, whether they want to do solar or whether they want to conserve water, that they have that information available to do that. On water and wastewater for 25 and out actually for the next 5 years, we've got our DOT project. Those kind of actually jumped, forward. We didn't expect the DOT to come back as quickly as they did following the work that they did. So that actually wasn't even on our radar for a budget item. And those are significant dollars. And then CACIP, we collaborate very closely with them. And there's an incentive inherently when you look at your street project. They do a 6-year rolling average. So the city actually, for all the dollars spent for the streets, there's some state aid that comes back to the community. So there's an incentive to stay aggressive with street work. And then long-term infrastructure viability is just working out that long-term plan, making sure that we are replacing these as we need to when the needs arise, but not waiting too long. So we've got issues like we're kind of in some ways we're facing today. Ideally, we had been systematically maybe being more aggressive. So there's an opportunity for us. So we'll go over to electric. We kind of broke this out this year so that each slide for each division, it started out with 25, and then we highlight 26, 27, 28, and 29. So looking at system reliability, we've got capacity and reconstruction projects. Really looking for opportunities where, so some from a reliability standpoint, we only replace, say, take things overhead to underground when there's a reliability issue. We do have certain areas that, say, whenever there's a storm that comes through, they are very heavily wooded, but mostly pines. And so looking to put some areas underground to be able to minimize those outages caused by that. There's a lake loop, which will show up on multiple times, is a big project that we're working on. We have 20 circuits. All of those circuits are looped except for one. And what that means is there's a tie. So if there's an outage, we're able to tie a circuit together. We can actually backfeed that circuit and get those customers on faster. We have one that runs up by the lake that does not have that reliability piece to be able to get those customers back on very quickly. My concern always has been the wrong car hits the wrong pole, and that could be a very extended outage. So looking to do that, but doing that in a systematic way because there's a lot of cost that comes with that. SCADA is our supervisor control and data acquisition, line sensors, and again, those are opportunities to make our system more reliable. If we do have an outage, to be able to find that outage more quickly. And then the building design, where there's three utilities, we have 500,000 in the budget to start the building design to move forward with. And then routine business operations, basically we buying transformers, which is part of our routine business operation. AMI, AMR enhancements. So back about not quite 20 years, we switched over to AMR, which means basically that we can read your meter by driving past your house, both electric and water. Those, unfortunately, meters, they say that the first meter ever built in the Smithsonian is still running just fine. Well, these new solid state meters don't have that kind of luck. And so now we're running into issues where we knew this coming in that they have a 20-year life on the water battery. Those batteries are starting to fail. And so we're looking at going forward as opposed to having this one time where we go in and replace all of the meters, that we actually do that in a very systematic way. So going forward, you'll see budget monies for moving over to AMI, but as opposed to having a $2 million expenditure, we'll be doing that in small increments year after year after year. So as we need to go then replace those meters 15 to 20 years later, we have an area the community will be focusing on as opposed to having this overall issue that we need to deal with. We also have certain requirements by the PFC to actually do meter testing. To go to every electric meter and actually test that and make sure that it's reliable, that it's reporting back correctly. That for the residential side is a 20-year cycle. We're looking at right now in 2027, 2028, about having to test about 8,800 meters. Again, looking forward and trying to address those things now, and then also look out to the long term to be able to make these more part of daily operations as opposed to having this one slug of work that we need to manage. And then fleets, we have actually finding more and more, especially like with the Lake project, is that when we do replace a pole, there's a lot of effort to make sure that we don't basically hit other utilities. So we've been actually using our back truck, which is not its purpose. It's done really, it's really to maintain the sewers. We're doing a lot of hydro excavating for pole replacement. So we're putting in the budget for a trailer back excavator to help support that team and to take some, basically not take up as much wastewater time to be able to help with that effort. And the duct trailer, we've been borrowing one for a while and just add that. So as we look out further than 2026, we've got our lake loop. Again, additional, the other substation, we've got regulators and controls to replace at the north substation, and system improvements. And really those system improvements are those opportunities for reliability. 27, we've got a lake loop, and then we'll have fleet, a digger derrick to replace. And I think we kind of just highlighted, there's a long list that you have in your packet. So if you've been questions to those, I can answer those as well. 28, more lake loop. And then as part of that lake loop, we are rebuilding a section of this existing infrastructure on 138. We did some pole testing there, and those poles are at basically end of their useful life, and we need to replace those. And then 29, we'll have the continued rebuild work. 138. Lighting upgrades at our substations and fleets will have that service truck as well as a quite a real trailer. Any questions on electric?
I think overall, could you remind us the purpose of the new building? Because it's mentioned throughout the budget and throughout the CIP, but if for us who may not remember why we need a new building for utilities.
Well, that's a lot of pieces to that, so I'll do my best to, and I do have the building referenced in the technical operations. We do have this kind of section of the budget that we consider technical operations because basically it benefits all three utilities. Right now, we rent the building that we're currently in the city. There kind of this discussion actually came out of, we maintain that building and we also pay rent. And the lease had come to an end and there became a lot of discussion about what does this lease look like going forward. And I'm a big believer that whatever we should be paying, so we did an analysis because we didn't really know if that's fair market rate. What rent should we be paying? So it was determined that we're paying about $130,000 today, that our rent should be about $220,000. Also, it came out of that report is there's probably better uses of that building than our. We're starting to grow out of that building. We actually did a bunch of work in the warehouse to be able to try to reorganize to better use the space we have. We've got stuff stored out at substations and we've got stuff just kind of in the back fenced in area that isn't the best, but it is working. We also know that we're looking at in probably 2032, although we are doing a study this next year to look at what are the needs of the wastewater treatment plant. Capacity wise, we've done some studies there. We think we're fine today for the capacity, but we're getting to a point of end of useful life and beyond of some of the infrastructure at the plant. We have all of our vehicles and some pumps and a variety of things that are down at wastewater treatment plant because we don't have space in our current building warehouse. So the goal would be to basically build a new building. It's an opportunity for the city if they so choose to do something different with that building. And then it's an opportunity for us to bring all of that stuff into one location, be more efficient from that standpoint, open up some space at wastewater for the future expansion, future needs that they're going to have. And so that's basically the reasoning for the building at this point in time.
Because it's a big increase that's happening across the board and the CIP. So I think it's important to understand why this building is a big factor and a lot of that increase. So
Absolutely.
why we're moving forward with that, considering it.
I appreciate that very much. And one of the things I should share is that when we started to look at the building, and Shannon did a great job trying to figure out what does this look like. We did utilize some who is currently building a building. We've looked at a lot of other ones and try to get an idea of estimated costs. So that's why we used the 22 million. The one thing though that I'm very concerned about, and I want to be extremely transparent, is what this building does for rates. We want to provide the best absolute service, be the most reliable, and the least rates that we can possibly provide. And so we did actually, I got the supervisors in the room. I said, okay, this is what we're looking at right now. If things move forward with this building, what can we do with this 5-year budget? What can we do going out to try to minimize any rate increases that we possibly have to have? So we went through and I really give mad props to our supervisors who came up with a lot of creative ideas, even so much as like right now we don't have the space for it, but if we actually were to separate our metal, there's an opportunity there for us to make more revenue from separating our metal when we actually clean up our trucks real time than we are today. They came up with a lot of different creative ideas. We pushed off some truck replacements. They're in good shape. We think that they're going to be okay. So let's push them out a little bit further if we can. So trying to do everything we can to minimize the impact that that building ultimately has. Any other questions on? Thank you. So on the water side, and again, I want to highlight that in the past, we'd be looking at like 600,000, and right now we're at 1.2. And I would say that this 2025 is kind of a lower year if you look at 5 years. So we've got collaborated with the city. They actually bills dollars for the street work. And so we're moving forward with water wastewater initially to try to minimize some budget impacts. I had hoped to not replace water and sewer there. But we did some additional televising, taking a look at what we have, and ultimately we've got a lot of stumps in that sewer. Fortunately, they haven't caused us any trouble. But this is now the opportunity to actually replace the infrastructure on that. And then we've got 51 from Fifth to Chalet. There's some minor pieces of replacement that we need to do for water. Utility projects, I kind of talked about the metering, converting to AMI, but trying to do that in a very systematic and slow way to the greatest extent that we can. Even so much as there's a number of utilities that are converting over from AMR to AMI. We have been procuring their AMR meters. Again, to try to put in those AMR meters that have now a longer life on the battery than the ones that we've now getting to a point of failing, replace those out to try to, again, extend those life out as long as we possibly can for the least cost. Dark fiber, we had a dark fiber project with the TDS work that was done, looking to actually have that all hooked up so that we can communicate with our wells. And then this is the IT part of it here, that we've got PLC replacements to actually make the dark fiber work, and those are programmable logic control. And so those are actually date back, some of them date back to when the last time we went through with the well and actually did a little bit of electrical rehab work there. So they're pretty old, and unfortunately they will not work with the dark fiber, so we need to replace those. And then the design of the building. So then I won't, unless you would like me to, I won't go through all of the street projects, but these were all discussed and collaborate. We did, I meet with Brett, Director Abear, regarding public works needs, and so we were able to come up with these street projects. And then again, big dollars for the DOT work in 26, and DOT work in 27, the AMI metering work that we're doing. 28, we have a list of street projects again. And then we have our AMI and AMR metering, fleet truck. And then in 29, we've got North Street and our wastewater in many ways is kind of a mirror of water. There are, just because I think of timing, a variety of different things, depending on the health of the utility. Also, at one point in time, the sewer utility, the collection system was overseen by Public Works. And at some point it came over to the utility because we were maintaining the plant, but the collection system. So there's timing where sometimes water main was replaced and sewer wasn't, or sewer was replaced and water wasn't. So from time to time, you'll see some discrepancies between, when we look at street projects, and they may have water work and not sewer, or vice versa. But typically they pretty much are a mirror of each other. When we're in there to do that street, we're going to do water and sewer. What we're looking to replace there is on the sewer side, we've got clay mains. Those historically, and they have a lot of I&I. So a lot of groundwater gets into that. That's clear water that we're treating at the plants. A lot of root intrusion, so create backups potentially. So he's trying to remove any clay, sewer main wherever we can. On the water side, we have a lot of 4-inch undersized water mains, and I should hit on this then. We were fortunate enough to be lead free and to do all that work, but we left the water mains in place, and so we've got a lot of 4-inch water mains, which are considered to be substandard, as well as their cast iron, so they have a tendency to break. We now replace them with our standard 8-inch ductile iron. For next year for wastewater, we've got the 4th Street project, and then some limited work on 5th Street. Mostly the wastewater work for 51 from 5th Street to Chalet is right by the fire station. We've got some sanitary sewer that needs to be replaced there, and then design for the building. And again, the same list of streets throughout for replacement. I guess the one exception would be in 2029, we do have interceptor sewer and map park replaced. We're looking to do that, but all the rest of them are consistent with the water. In technical operations, these are kind of the items that sort of live in all 3 buckets. This is kind of the run through of those. The biggest one you're going to see with this is the building. that we are looking to do in 26. Anybody has any questions or anything that they would like to learn more about? Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I think the plan is that we're having the budget meeting is at the next council meeting. And at that point, we'd be looking to approve the utilities budget as well. Is how I understood it. Is that correct? So if you have any questions about any of the budget items between now and the next council meetings, feel free to reach out to Dave or myself or Jill. And she can get the questions answered if it's regarding utilities. All right. We're into our action items now. The first thing would be our consent agenda. There's a number of items in the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by President Reeves. Is there a second? Second by Alder Schumacher. Would anybody like anything acted on separately from the consent agenda?
I just have a question. The council minutes from September 24th are exactly what was in the packet the last time when I asked people to update them with the actual motions and what was decided. It is the exact same, so they haven't been really updated.
Oh, okay. I did talk to the clerk's office about that. I thought they were corrected. Candy, do you have note of that?
I do. I thought the right ones were placed in there. I'll take another look at that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, maybe wrong, but I didn't see any motions or seconds or anything.
Okay. I'll take another look.
Maybe there wasn't any notes taken. I have no idea, but usually there is.
All right. Did you want to have that one removed? Or,
Yeah, I kind of wanted to reflect what was actually
Okay.
decided.
which one was that? September?
September 24th.
Okay, so, we'll remove that. We'll bring that one back to the next meeting. Anything else on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. And any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, the next item is number 7, which is the riverfront redevelopment, city-owned properties on the Yarra River. And we're looking to enter in a memorandum of agreement. This to go through the RDA. I don't know, Attorney Nancy, if you want to walk us through this. And then maybe we can get a motion from one of the RDA members. Developers are here as well if you want. If you guys, have questions for the developers, I don't know how much you'll be able to answer, but they're interested in moving forward with this agreement. Go ahead, Rick.
So basically, the RDA, since the Bring project is no longer moving forward, over the last few months, they've been looking at potential new developers for the riverfront site. So they have Becker Services reached out to a few developers, and the RDA interviewed 2. Of those 2, Alexander was selected to move forward with the project that they were proposing, or like, I guess, general concept. So what this MOU or MOA for tonight is essentially allowing Alexander to do a 6-month due diligence process on the property. So the way it would work is they would provide the city with a $25,000 upfront payment that would cover all the city's costs throughout the due diligence period, I guess. So during that period, the developer would be looking at and evaluating the title. If there's some environmental issues we want to get clarified on the property. There would be working out a development agreement that presumably would include TIF incentives. So basically, the city is going to get $25,000. It's going to agree not to market any of these properties for 6 months while the developer does their due diligence on the property. That $25,000 will be covering all of the city's costs, or is supposed to cover all the city's costs, but it would go towards any purchase price or like the option price to buy the property. So it's a little bit different, I guess, than how we usually do the like the cost reimbursement, but it effectively works thing because you're getting the money up front to pay your cost. The one thing I would note is that there's like a termination. Basically, the city can only terminate for cause. The developer can terminate at will. But given that we're getting the money up front, and the, I guess, obligations of the city are to work with the developer to help clear any title issues. We provide a draft development agreement. Our deliverables are pretty straightforward. Basically, they're going to be doing the heavy lifting and evaluating the title work on the property. So the RDA is recommended approval and moving forward with Alexander to, I guess, start the process for redeveloping the riverfront site.
All right, thank you. Anything from the RDA members you want to add? Alder Hirsch.
I think we had good conversations around moving forward with this, and we're anxious to get started with this developer and look at the future of the site that has been blighted for too long now.
All right, are there any initial thoughts or questions from the alders? If not, I guess
I do have one quick thing looking at the MOA today.
Sure.
When we get to expenses, number 14, it looks like the numbering kind of got skewed. I'm not sure if sections were to be intended a certain way, but
Yeah, I
just
noticed
as a
that
heads
too,
up.
all the indents being weird.
indents were a little off, but the numbering also was like,
Oh, it's
it all
from
went to
14
14 to
to
16, then back to 15 and 17. So just to be aware,
We can.
I don't know if that, yeah,
Okay.
it's a small.
Anything else? Otherwise, we're looking for a motion. The RDA has already recommended approval of this. So if you want to make the motion,
I'd move to approve.
motion by Peyton, second.
Second.
Second by Wozniak, Scanlon. Any discussion?
Under number 2, the development agreement, and there's this grammatical that says, which shall be credited. So I think we need to get rid of, shall be somewhere.
It's right almost in the middle.
Yeah.
We're just trying to reiterate that.
Yeah, they're really emphasizing.
Well, that's a little.
All right.
So I'll move to approve since we're doing things twice.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, thank you. Thanks for being here, guys. Can wave on the two guys on the way out there that are gonna be working closely with the RDA.
Utilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything they ever wanted. But we'll agree to
Okay, item number 8 is, review of the proposed change to MR chapter 78 was a residential change in the zoning code. And I think, who wants to talk about this one? It said somebody want to come up and talk about this. Sure, you can do the podium or you can sit up here, whichever you're more comfortable with. Is this the right document we want?
Yeah, you can pull that up.
Okay,
So essentially what we did is, one of the things that we went, this is essentially looking at multifamily residential 10 and multifamily residential 24. So currently the 2 multifamily residential zoning districts, and what those 10 and 24 is the max number of units per acre. And what was happening prior to me being here is they would issue a plan development over that, and that would be how they would issue essentially flexibilities. And so one of the things that I did, and I will continue to do as I'm here, is I'm going to start updating these ordinances to reflect what you guys are passing, essentially. So I took this to the Plan Commission. I wrote it down in May, June, July, and August. We took all of the different suggestions, and what you have in front of you is what was the redline version of what we're bringing forth today. I did create Well, so just an FYI, when this went over into Google, it got rid of all my red lines. So I went in and printed out a red line version and scanned it. So you're seeing the portion of the document with the most red line area in it. All of the stuff that says any references to multifamily residential 10 and multifamily residential 24 will go away, and it'll just be MR. So throughout the document, because I think the whole document is like 360 pages long. So, but that's where you'll start seeing those changes. And I didn't want you guys to have to look at all of that. So, this is the actual document right here, but could you go back to my slide? And I can kind of go over some really basic information. And then I know you guys, I don't know how much you want to be, informed on this versus like we did take it to the plan commission 4 minimum times before bringing it here. So I'll go over the stuff. If you guys have additional questions that you want to go into, feel free to, ask. So essentially that is the area that we're looking at. That is a list currently of all the different zoning districts. So you can kind of see how they're laid out. And we're going to be looking at, in some ways, simplifying this. So it's staying within that one zoning district. So like multifamily is one zoning district instead of 2. So I'll have Tim, I'm going to have you lead. So this is just reiterating, increasing the number of units has been done through plan development in the past. And that's how we've done things. And I'll have you kind of start down. So I brought up a couple of different examples of this throughout the years. 9 Guard is the streets apartment. There was 120 units per acre that was permitted in this. Yeah. So that's an example of, so it was a difference of like 40 units essentially is what was permitted using that overlay district. You want to go ahead to the next slide. Another one was the 211 South Water Street. This had 12 additional units in addition to a couple other things as well. And then this one is kind of interesting because it only ended up being 2 extra units that ended up being added for the minimum. So basically those 2 units, the 2 multifamily residential 10 and 24 is just going to become 1, and there'll be an increase in the number of units per acre as long as the developer can meet minimum requirements. So.
Yeah, we did meet with the county today, and I kind of felt like they thought we were going in the right direction when we met with them.
I think they were a little taken back because I was like, they were like, oh, what are you doing for your zoning code? And I was like, well, actually, we're taking the multifamily residential tonight, plan commission. And they were like, oh, I don't think they knew what they had to say, quite frankly.
Yeah, because what they're doing is part of their affordable housing strategy that I've talked about in the past is they're going to come up with a booklet, a brochure of things that you may want to consider in your zoning to make things easier to facilitate development. And then we don't necessarily have to follow them, but we certainly can. They're going to basically gather all the different zoning codes from other municipalities and put them into one document, and then we can figure out what makes sense for us here in Stoughton. But based on our conversation, I kind of felt like we were heading in the right direction.
The other thing too is if anyone here, and my commission knows this, but I've said this several times, if you want me to look at specific ordinance or information, please reach out to me. I can do the research. We can see what direction to take it. Okay. So just a side note on that. All right, go ahead, Tim. So just little bit of housekeeping, and there's actually a really great UW Extension has a really great training. But what you have in zoning code is you have what's a permitted use, that's what's allowed by right, and then you have a conditional use in a zoning district, which is where we can put conditions on that, and then you have stuff that's not permitted in the zoning district. So just a little information, so in case it comes up when we're explaining some stuff. Okay, so here's an example of what was taken with these 2 zoning districts compressed into one. A lot of the stuff was already existing, permitted and conditional uses in the MR 12 and 24. So permitted use under principle, so lower density residential, which spells out in those, solar energy systems. How they had done this in the past was for some reason they had all of the stuff listed and then under another area they had energy permitted solar wind conditional. I don't know, why wasn't that in those other spaces? So I tried to put everything under what was a permitted use and conditional use, so you wouldn't have to search throughout the document. Conditional uses, principal land uses, higher density residential, community gardens, which is spelled out in our ordinance very well. And I went ahead and echoed that in that area. Group daycare centers, that's a new one. And I think that that is something that we want to encourage in higher density residential areas is, you know, if there's people there, encourage daycare centers. So, and then number 4 is the permitted accessory use. This is detached residential structures, daycare under 8 children. This is a state code. And then private residential recreational facilities, so essentially the gym. And then temporary uses, that was all stuff that was already in there, and I just put it in its own section. So it would be like the on-site real estate construction, those kind of things, construction spaces, that stuff, so temporary uses. And so essentially what's happening now is we spelled out what needs to happen in order for that area to have building placed on it. This is just an example, but they have to be within the building envelope. They have to be able to meet minimum parking requirements. They have to have a buffer yard, meet minimum landscape requirements, minimum floor area, and so on. And that's going to have to dictate how many units can be on that site. So in other words, if they have a lot of wetland, they might not even be able to maybe get 24, depending on how it lays out. So the other thing we did too is we did have minimum requirements for facade. We wrote it so like when the developer comes in, they have to meet 1 or 3 of these 3 lists in order to have, and that's part of the conditional use permit. And so we really do need stuff spelled out as part of the conditional use permit in order to permit or deny those. That's the baseline for. And I made this very simple because I didn't know how much detail you guys wanted when I'm talking about this. So that was all I provided. Do you guys have any additional questions or concerns or? That's really exciting. You guys are all very excited. So.
Okay, and I think, so the plan is you're working on this. Are you looking for feedback at this point, or what are you looking for?
I think we need to look for feedback, and I think the next meeting, it needs to be brought for, you know, the first reading at the next meeting.
So we'll have to put it in an ordinance form. And have you reviewed this yet?
Yes, so basically focusing on the conditional use portion of it, which, you know, a lot of you have heard the conditional use spiel a lot, but essentially trying to put as many measurable standards or like specific standards in the conditional uses as possible. And it was based on my conversations with Chris, like a lot of the standards are based on what were included in the PUDs. So what, you know, putting those standards in the conditional use permits, you don't go through the PUD process, and it's although it's specifically important.
I just have one question. Did you say on the facade, they didn't need to meet all of those or?
No, they had to meet 3 of the 5 minimum requirements. If you guys want to increase that, that's fine. I started looking at other ordinances, and forgive me, because I really did research this and brought it in like, I think it was, so it would have been, I wrote this in May, right? But I started looking at other ordinances, trying to figure out the best direction to go. And I was like, okay, having them meet, you know, these, depending on like, so for example, one of the things is like, I'm going to paraphrase, but like students, well, if it's not in the design of that area, like that would be one of the 3 of them that's not being met, but they have to meet the other one. So it could be layouts, it could be adjustable, but if you want to increase that too, you just need to tell me. Or if you want to go a different direction, that's fine too.
And is that in there? Now I'm trying to find it because I closed out, but is that in there somewhere? Or that's just a proposal that you're.
No, that's in the proposed change. That's a proposed change.
Okay, because I saw the list, but I didn't see the 3 lists, but
There's, okay, there's other things in the multifamily residential that I added as well that I didn't really dive into. So for example, you know, they have to have, a certain number of like spaces for bikes. They have to tie into existing, you know, trail systems. If there's one within X amount of feet, they need to essentially hide. I'm gonna, like, the equipment needs to have buffers around it so that somebody's not looking out at, you know, all the air units. Just stuff like that. And I didn't really want to, I mean, I totally have no problem going into all of those details. A lot of that stuff was already in your ordinance. I was just moving it into somewhere that was easier to find, and then maybe sharpening the language so it was very specific on like, hey, this, and this. Because I mean, one of the things for Rick, he knows like the sound of my voice at this point. But we've had calls where we're like, some of the stuff, and it's in the same ordinance, will directly like with it. So it's like frontage of 50 feet, front yard with 40. What does that mean? Like, so street frontage and front yard, and then they're two separate numbers. Not Paul Rick and I'll be like, what do you want me to do here? And I'm sure he's like, cool, thanks. Thanks for calling me. So, but yeah, so we're really trying like just systematically fix a lot of this. And this, quite frankly, I think is probably low hanging fruit because of the fact that we just keep issuing plan developments over it. It's like, okay, there's clearly the need, right? We need to update the ordinance. We need to match what we've been approving, you know, with these plan developments. So it was an easy decision, easy direction to go. So that makes sense. Thank you.
President Reeves, that's on page 10 of that markup document for your reference that you were mentioning. Secondly, the minimum usable floor area, how do you determine the minimum by which standard? So I know it's written into it, but how did you come to those numbers?
So
Sorry.
I was like, oh man, no, that's a great question. And this was something I actually had to research a lot at previous jobs, for obvious reasons. I went and pulled them too. So right now we reference state code, and a lot of these I think are referenced to state code. I just like them spelled out a little better.
Mhm.
The only variation in the minimum floor spaces and stuff that we're paying is in state code. I think it just is written as 2 exit points per bedroom. So in theory, you could have 2 doors with no window. And I was like, door and a window, like a vertical window was required. And that was something that I wrote in, not a skylight. So that was the only, I think, real major change from like what we referenced in this area.
Yeah, I was just curious as I look through the multifamily, you also list out single family, 2-family dwellings, but multifamily, I think the 3 bedroom being 1,000 square feet at the minimum or more bedrooms is like, well,
It's tight.
that's pretty tight.
Yeah,
But-
it is.
But secondly, I do think a skylight would be a really fun way as a second exit from your
I mean,
bedroom. So I don't know if we want to completely rule that out on top floor.
I mean, yeah,
That's true. We should require a slide on the other.
I agree with all of that, and I will write it.
Right.
We'll write it into the code.
That's,
So
of course. What else would it? Yeah. Mhm.
weird, but I was like, man, that's just, yeah. So if we want to do that, I totally have no problem putting this type part, but yeah, no, that was why, and I agree. I think that those were based, if I'm remembering correctly, off minimum state requirements as well.
As long as that's the case, I think I could
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah, I think the only one I went above and beyond was the window.
Sure.
All right, any other questions? Otherwise, if you want to spend more time and redo it, just let us know. That would be fine, and we can discuss it at the next meeting or two.
Yeah, and if you're and then take back in the markup for reading, but
All right, thank you. Next item is, R-150 of 2024. This one came from the Plan Commission, Alderperson Carabello.
Okay, let me find this one. So this looks like it is a resolution by the Common Council of the City of Stoughton conditionally approving the preliminary plat for lot 2 and 3 and outlot 1 of DSM 16445, located in section 31, town 6 north, range 11 east, city of Stoughton, Dane County, Wisconsin, and I so move.
Second by Alderperson Mieski, Alderperson Caravella.
I think since I'm sure there's a lot to cover here, I'm just gonna hand it over to planning director.
Come on back,
Chris,
Chris.
if she's okay with that.
Sounds like you need a compass so you can find this piece of property.
That was a lot of stuff, but generally known as the Stoughton Trailer Development.
So this is actually, both 9 and 10 is how I wrote up my planner's report on your agenda. So that way we can kind of talk about it. Those that haven't gotten to see my planner's report, the mayor pulled one up. So essentially, this is the phase 2 of the Stoughton trailers. We have, how much information do you guys want me to give? I don't know if you want me to go into my whole spiel or like just keep it very light. Just let me know. But this is not including that lot 1. Everything else around it is what it's including. When I write up the planner's reports, essentially what I do is I'll look at so you can see that was the original CSM that you guys approved. So, and that lot 1 in the center is not included in this area because that's the certain trailer. Go ahead and scroll down. So here's the proposed zoning, which you guys would have amended the comp plan to meet these requirements so they could zone, zone this area. So they're looking at multifamily residential in a couple of locations, single family, and then planned, like essentially a business is the thing. The lots 1 through 9 are duplex lots, and then you got the outlot areas. So what I've done is I combined both reviewing the plat, the preliminary plat, and reviewing the zoning districts, and I had my planner recommendations that have the minimum requirements on there. This is actually an updated planner's report. So do you guys want me to talk about 2 updated things that kind of came to fruition in the planning? Okay, so go ahead and scroll down, Tim. So the first one is, keep going. So here's my recommendations, which the plan board agreed with in addition to the developer. Here we're coming to road B. These are the duplex lots. One of my main concerns on this area was access control, essentially, because it's kind of it'll be a heavier business traveled road. During the plan board meeting, the area was suggested to have 5 access points. So in other words, 2 lots sharing 1 access point was suggestion on those particular lots. And then if you can continue scrolling down.
Access points from which side?
Well, so it'd have to
that would be.
Yeah, so essentially you'd have an access point here with the duplexes set up here, access point here, access point here.
From
and then
road
you've got
B.
one.
From
Yes.
road B.
Yeah, that's the only way to access those.
Okay.
So. And then, so yeah, if you want to go ahead and keep scrolling down for me, Tim. Thank you, by the way. I didn't update this, but that won't be an issue. That'll be during the final. Keep going down. A lot of this was housekeeping. So, just kidding. Tim, go up to number 8. So currently there's a proposed cul-de-sac on Oak Ridge Way. The area is very close to the maximum length of the cul-de-sac per ordinance. It's highly recommended that the area be reconfigured with the consideration of street and safety impact. The cul-de-sac stays, the developer needs to provide and this is where I added. So this is the part that I added for the meeting. If the cul-de-sac stays, the developer needs to provide a 10-foot path, multi-path with a 1.5 foot clearance on either side of the path for emergency services go through using that lift station area that's there, essentially. And then they also need to come up with a plan that DPW can remove snow from those areas, because that becomes the biggest problem on these cul-de-sacs, and it is long. So you can keep scrolling down, Tim, and it'll be on the next page. So here's the location, and you can see the cul-de-sac here,
Exactly.
right here. This was a suggestion on the 3rd Street. Additionally, there are concerns regarding the lot 13 and the multifamily zoning. The city asked that the lot be explored for other uses, and it's this lot right here. So right now, that's this is how it's laid out. This is a multifamily residential, that's 1.69, and then you've got 2 additional single-family residential lots there.
So at the plan commission meeting, we were suggesting that that cul-de-sac should just punch through the Greenbrier. And kind of the compromise was to have them design something so we could have emergency access through there if needed, and then something for the snow removal. Because to remove snow from that cul-de-sac is a pretty good haul, because the road that leads up Barberry, you might recall that road's the one with the barricade up on the hill. That's where the town line is. We can't really haul snow up there. If you take it the other way, it's a pretty good stretch going the other way to get the snow out of that cul-de-sac. It's just not really a very efficient setup for public work.
So, but there's that one cul-de-sac, but then it looks like there's a second cul-de-sac right to the right of that. Isn't that gonna cause the same problem?
That one will be
Yeah,
easy.
it's not as
It's
long.
not as
So
long. Yeah.
if you could, can you scroll down to page 10 of my report?
Okay, yep.
Thank you.
This one? Or,
No, keep going. So I know it's gonna be harder. Keep going. Keep going. I really like long reports apparently.
John,
Keep going.
good.
Okay, stop.
Good.
So this cul-de-sac is right here.
Okay.
Okay, you're
Oh,
only
the
seeing
street
the
heading
tip
up to
of
it.
it in that ordinance, so it's actually here.
Yeah.
So that's the length of the cul-de-sac. Now, this area should in theory punch through, and there's been a lot of debate on this, but so the cul-de-sac goes from here to here, where this one right here is only, I mean, on the sheet is, so it's not, I don't even think I measured it, because it wasn't, it's only got what, like 5 single-family houses on it. It's not very long at all.
yeah, so you might recall that on Barberry where the barricade is, we have a long-standing agreement with the town of Dunkirk not to have that opened up. They did that temporarily. They did open it during construction of the roads, but the agreement said when that construction was done, we had to put the barricade back up, because the folks that live in Eggleston's Woods don't want people cutting through the road there. So that creates a longer stretch for this cul-de-sac. So we're trying to figure out a way to, you know, to address that for maintenance and then for emergency management. Because if they have to pull a fire hose or something like that, that's gonna be a long pull.
Yeah.
But, you know, depending on where the incident is, it's possible that they would go on Greenbrier and pull it the other way too. But you have the lift station that's gonna be relocated there, so we're requesting at least a path through there so we can get a vehicle in there. And our folks in there, if something were to arise.
So it's not gonna be a straight road, it's only gonna be a path? I mean, that doesn't make sense.
I think you suggested a 10-foot wide path that would basically extend the cul-de-sac.
So
And in that cul-de-sac currently, previously there was a fire hydrant that was installed there when it basically dead ended. So that's right smack in the middle of the cul-de-sac, so we'd have to go around that.
So essentially, just in general, so when, multifamily paths are installed, they are normally installed for the purpose, like one of the purposes of them is not just so you can ride your bike, but if you fall off your bike, emergency services can get to you where you fall off. So those are normally designed with that in mind. And I met with Brett and the fire chief, and one of the things was like, hey, if we can get a multi-use path that's wide enough that we can get emergency services through this area in the event that they can't get down, that would be the compromise here. So, and it is, that area is a lift station that's getting turned over. You know, it's gonna be a lift station area with
I
access.
think Jill has some thoughts too.
Yeah,
70,000. Need to have access to that lift station, any other maintenance that we could add.
So does a 10-foot,
Critical.
Jill, so does a 10-foot paved path work, or is that not really ideal?
I think it'd be ideal to be a little bit wider than that. I can, verify exactly what we need, but, 12 feet would be ideal, in my opinion.
we can go, so that's why when I was talking with Josh, it was like 10 foot wide, but we have to have at least a foot and a half clearance on either side, so we don't take out our mirrors. That was the,
Yeah, so, I mean, ultimately, we're at the preliminary plat stage, so we don't have to make that decision tonight. But we are looking for feedback. I know the developers are too. Danielle, you're welcome to.
you want to come up and speak, guy?
Sure.
And I know Steve's online too.
Another one right here.
Well, yeah, I was thinking,
I might
I
have
have you looking right here. That one.
Because I live over it.
I'll just introduce myself really quick. Again, I'm Danielle Thompson, working as project manager with Stoughton Trailers, and President Reese, I know you're gonna miss us. Just going. I also had just a couple comments. There are two. One is, I think Chris maybe alluded and said that the developer was on board with the access points. I would say that isn't currently the case, so we're going to need to discuss that in a little more detail. We had some feedback. A lot of this plan is consistent with, just going back to that first point, I just wanted to make sure that it didn't get lost, that it was something that we were on board with. One of the issues that came up in the plan is that road B that wraps around the park would be a collector road. And from our perspective, that would not fall within the definition of a collector road if we look at what collector roads have been defined out in Stoughton already. So we have like Roby Road, County Highway B, and some of the other roads over in the Kell Park subdivision, and those connector roads, they go straight out to a major highway, to Highway B, 138, 51. Our road B is internal, and so it's within the subdivision, and so we think that road should be treated as a local road, just as it is defined, and it fits within the definition of how a local road would be. And we're looking to have a discussion over the access points, because what you have are 9 twin home lots. In our opinion, you should, at a minimum, have a driveway for twin homes. So that would be 9 access points at a minimum. So we would request that we reevaluate this and look, is it really a connector road? And B, each twin home should at least have one driveway into their property. So those are things that we want to discuss and have more conversation on. Just that is an open item on our end, something that we want to continue. If there are questions or we want to talk more about that, I'm happy to do that. I'll reference the second piece really quick too about that cul-de-sac. There are many projects that we can look at in terms of how this is done. One example is in Fitchburg, by where I am temporarily. There is actually a lift station that is on the other side. You not only go down past, you cross the walking path, and it's behind there, up against the stormwater pond. And so there isn't the main road out of that, but those are some ways that it's being designed. So, we can look at exactly how wide those pathways are that go to some of the other ones that are designed similar to this, to make sure that they fit within the safety needs, and then talk through also the snow removal issue that came up. So those are, I just wanted to raise those, that we're happy to discuss and talk through those, but we're looking at scenarios that are not uncommon and that are consistent with different areas that are having passed to lift stations that about and
So just let me clarify. So you're saying that on the road B, the duplexes, you're advocating for how many access?
at a minimum of 1 per lot.
Okay, and we were saying,
There's 9 lots,
yeah, we were saying 5 they would share.
and we're not really sure how that could be possible because of how the access would be. So That's why we want to talk through that, because each twin home should at least for two, if it's a duplex or a townhome, they should at least have one access per residential lot. And so that's all we're asking at a minimum, that they have that. We're not really sure we can even make the 5 work, and I'm not sure how that.
Yeah, I think our concern was really just having that many curb cuts.
I think when we looked at it, we were just like looking around and we're like, we have the here's 2 curb cuts, here's 2 curb cuts, here's 2 curb cuts, here's potentially 8. You know, and any time that you're adding a curb cut, it's an area for collision. And you've got Road B, you've got an area that potentially across the street is getting developed. I just tried to get out of Verona with a soccer tournament. And if that's what goes in across the street, it's gonna be difficult living there, and then to add 18 curb cuts then.
Yeah, and I think,
Eventually.
and I think that was kind of the point I was gonna make when you talked about whether or not it could be a collector street or not, with potentially a 30+ acre community park there. I think inherently it's a collector street, whether it connects to the highway or not, just because of the amount of traffic and amount of people and going in and out of there. I think that's why we brought that up as a concern. So the question will be for the council is, do you want to go ahead and move forward with the motion that's on the table, and then have us continue to work on these issues? And if you want us to continue to work on the issues, do you want to do it here, or do we take it back to the plan commission to do those and then bring it back as part of the final plat? So I'm trying to figure out process wise how we can best utilize your time in order to address what we think are issues, or if you guys are okay with what they're proposing, then we would need to know that too.
Well, so this would be the preliminary plat, and so these would be things that the 2 issues could be essentially negotiated out. Tonight, you guys are making a motion to essentially approve the zoning. So if you have a problem with the zoning, that needs to be addressed now prior to,
And the
approving
zoning was that one map that had multifamily
Yes,
residential, and that's it that we're voting on.
you're
because-
voting on the zoning, which is hard set, right?
Right.
You know, unless they want to come in and ask for a change in zoning. And then it's a preliminary plat, so preliminarily, you're approving it with the understanding they've got to come back and get a final plat.
Yeah, and I think in all fairness to them, they need to understand in the final plat whether or not you want to see any changes. Otherwise, they're thinking, well, it's good to go. And if you're like, well, we kind of want more work done on that, at least some direction would be good. So we have 2 different things here. We have the zoning, which is the lot in the realm there, number 13, that we don't know if that really belongs there, and that it's the rest of the layout there. And then the other one would be direction on that cul-de-sac, and then the curb cut for the duplexes.
I think Brett had his.
Just a general question, as far as between preliminary plat approval and final plat approval, does any clock start from the preliminary plat to
I know
final?
there is a clock. What is it? Is it 6 months or a year?
Yeah, I want to say it's a year, but I would need to verify that. Of when they would have to basically submit the final plat for.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that,
I
is
thought it
that in the
was
shelters
shorter.
agreement?
No, I mean, it's in our ordinance, actually. So, you know, I'm
What's the other thing, and she's looking for that? If 58 and 57 are all multifamily, I don't think that's meeting our comprehensive plan. I thought that residential multifamily was supposed to be integrated, not have solid box of multifamily, and then a little bit that this is not, to me, is not adhering to our comprehensive plan, so I would send it back. Because I would not approve this. This is exactly what we didn't want via our comprehensive plan, is to have a solid block of multifamily.
I think we have too many unresolved issues in this
Something to speak to on that is it's multifamily doesn't necessarily mean that it's one massive.
No, but we don't want multiple buildings and multifamily. What are, according to our comprehensive plan, there should be integrated along with single-family homes. And if that, as far as I know, that hasn't changed yet, since we haven't got a new comprehensive plan.
Well,
So,
if you scroll down to, I have the comprehensive plan map, the future, like the future land use map on here. So keep going, it's on page 10. Or 10. Go back up. Keep going, just a little bit more.
Neighborhood, yeah.
So what that area, no, go down a little bit more, just kidding. There you go. So the circle is that area that was approved, the amendment that you guys made to the comprehensive plan. So that dotted area all the way around was dotted for, planned neighborhood, and it is an array of different stuff in there. So you can, like, that's that dotted area, and it's, I'm sorry, I can't.
it's really poorly.
So we've got single family, two family, multifamily, I think it's institutional, neighborhood offices, neighborhood businesses, recreational areas, and open spaces. And that's all in that area.
Right, but according to what you showed us with the zoning, that is not what it is. You have a giant swath of multifamily and then some residential, single family, and that's not according to the comprehensive plan. They should be really more integrated. If you look at Nordic Ridge, you see that it's more integrated. You don't have a giant, huge swath. Yes, they're on the corner, but you're not, it's way too much. I would never, it has to be more integrated.
Well, this is what was approved through the comprehensive plan amendment, so I don't know
Yeah.
if it's fair to the developer to go back and say.
No, I mean, but it's where it is. Yes, you can have all those things, but when you parcel out multifamily here, and then you have residential in another block, that's not part of it.
So I don't understand what you're describing. You want to have one multifamily building, then some single family homes, and then another multifamily building?
Do you want, so this is, and
Well, if you look at actually KPW, it has a split, even though it's not really built out. You have some multifamily, you have some single family. You don't have a giant block. Well, actually, they were trying to do that away. And if you look at Nordic Ridge too, it's more integrated. I think what we tried to do in the last comprehensive plan is not have huge neighborhoods of multifamily where they don't feel included into the single family. It was supposed to be a more inclusive type neighborhoods that we're supposed to be creating, not
Yeah, I kind of
exclusionary.
feel that this is inclusive. It's all in the same development. You have the park, the trail, and the roads that are all shared by everyone that
I'm
lives
just
there.
saying that.
And we've already approved the comprehensive plan amendment. I really don't know if now is the appropriate time to go back on that. Go ahead.
I think,
You know, clearly,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
clearly there's a lot of questions. We have a lot of, unanswered questions, a lot of questions that people want to, they're not questions, they have things that they need to have cleared up for them. This is not going to be, the way I'm hearing it right now, this is not going to be moving forward tonight, and therefore I am going to recommend a motion to postpone until next meeting for this, for approval.
We send it back to plan to iron out some of these things. That's what I would
If-
propose. Because it seems like the developer and plan commission are at odds. And I don't think city council should be
I don't know if
moderator.
we're at odds, but I think that, you know, we are updating our comp plan this next year and following. And if we want to really specify what stuff is, having giant blocks of stuff that's in development without like percentages in our ordinance is hard for me to nail down. Like, I don't have a problem enforcing this stuff. But if you look, it's a pie that any of the stuff can be involved in. Right next to it are actual, like, you can see very specific, like multifamily, this, or this, and not just a general. And if that's the direction we want to go, I would prefer it because then I have something solid to say, no, you have to have 52% or 25%. But the way that the language is written currently, I don't know that I can do that necessarily. I mean, we could try, and I think that if you want more of a transition, that's the direction you're going, then that's what you're asking. Like, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I really like that, you know?
Mhm.
So I'm hearing a motion to postpone, but where do you want it to go to? Want it to go back to plan, or you guys want it to come here?
I think that it needs to go back to here, but after alders have a chance to give their questions and get answers from the planning director.
So I'm looking for
Clarification on what they're actually looking at, what is actually being proposed, and better clarity on just the issues that are being raised. I'll second that.
All right, so I do have a second, by Alderperson Schumacher. And since it's a postponement, we can discuss it. I know, Steve Tremlett is online. He's the engineer for this. Is there something you wanted to say, Steve?
Thank you for giving the chance to speak. I just want to note that we worked through the comp plan amendment with this same concept, what was presented tonight, even per the zoning, to say that that matched what the intent of the comp plan. And I guess I would request consideration of finding language in the comp plan that this is against what is allowed. Plan Commission actually recommended the zoning as presented to go through. So we're not at odds at that point. So I'm just asking to think a little bit about what statements you're making to what comp plan says and what process we went through over the last 2 years to get to this point. We had more multifamily to the south, but what we heard from the neighborhood where we had a large turnout and from staff at the time that putting it on the eastern half was a better location away from the existing low density residential and putting it closer to the larger unit of the school and the church. So I felt the development team actually listened to commentary both from the neighborhood and from the city, and what we presented is what we presented 2 years ago. So just thank you for the moment to speak.
Sure. Thank you. Anything else from Alders?
I got the sense that you were gonna speak a little bit more before all these other folks did as to that yellow dotted section. What you see in there, I'm not sure.
I would say
everything
it
was
wasn't
stated.
completely related to the yellow dotted. I would echo what Steve said about this, that this has been something that we have worked with, at the community meetings have worked with and commission and council over a significant period of time. And the comp plan was amended and we went through the TIF process and we calculated everything based on this. And so I don't, just to echo what Steve's saying, I don't believe we're presenting anything that's different than we have come forward in the past. There's just a couple of points that I think might be helpful in evaluating some of the other information. What we have had is also to keep in mind our phase one approvals for everything going through in terms of roads, streets, everything that has received 100% plan approval to put the lift station and where things are located. So again, this is also very consistent with the comp plan. And then the phase one has received 100% approval from the city and utilities and council previously. So the final item I just want to mention is when we talk about the park as well,
there are some options we can look at for parking, but, we have gone through the traffic impact analysis as well. And there is information to show that the travel patterns on that road will ultimately be very insignificant in terms of traffic. The park is not slated to be set up as a regional tournament site. It is more for soccer mornings and multiple uses that are, the goal out there would be, would there be a soccer game here and there? Would there be parking restricted maybe on one side of the street only to protect those residents? There are some options that we are very willing to look at, but when we look at the traffic count numbers and how that impacts the park and where traffic is actually going out onto Highway B and 51, that road B really isn't going to have a significant amount of traffic based on that analysis. So we do have a lot of information that we're happy to share, provide, and get into more detail, but I just want you to be aware that we put a lot of thought in this and a lot of work, and we are not changing anything that we previously come to with.
Okay. Alderperson Carvalho.
The traffic impact analysis, I think, would be very helpful.
Sure.
And also, yeah, for me, the access, those curb cutouts onto the collector street, those units at the north section of this proposed development, and that cul-de-sac access. I think we just need to get ironed out, figured out how the best way to resolve that. I think myself personally, I'd like to see that be a wide trail through there, but then the question that was brought up, how do we make sure that people don't view it as a street or regular road, but there's all that kind of thing.
We actually had that conversation with the fire department when we were talking about the, like, stuff that would turn, that people could get through, but and emergency vehicles normally have a lock key. You know what I'm talking about?
Mayor, are we discussing the postponement right now or the actual item? Because I think at this point, we need to know whether we're postponing or we're continuing discussion on item.
Yeah, but I think as part of the postponement, we would want to understand exactly what we should be working on between now and the next meeting. So at the next meeting, you guys
We
will-
don't know if this would keep.
right. But if there is, before you vote on that, like direction, if it's not postponed, then we have our direction. Go ahead.
So I won't be here, but where I was getting a little hung up was, and maybe getting this clarified, is the zoning piece of it with just the structures, and then the whole bit about the cul-de-sac and the driveways, because it does seem like there might be a bit of distance between the city and the developer about, are there this many driveways and what about the cul-de-sac? So I was getting all that a little bit muddy, so I think some clarity about, can we vote on this one and be done with it? And, then what about all those other things? Because it doesn't even seem like there was, clear direction on that.
So you're saying that the cul-de-sac issue is not actually a zoning issue. That's
Well, that's
a
what
design issue.
That's what I was kind of
Yeah.
understanding, but not being on plan commission, I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, but the resolution that we're looking at postponing is based on the plat. And the cul-de-sac is part of the plat. And so is the curb cut. So I think that's what we're looking at now. Because it doesn't sound like between the planning commission and tonight, you guys have brought us a plan as we asked you to do at the planning commission to address that. That's the issue. At the plan commission, we gave clear direction that we wanted you guys to bring the plan to address the curb cuts and to address the cul-de-sac, and you haven't done that. So if I was on this body, I would probably be looking at postponing it myself based on those two things. Because you were clearly asked to do that and you haven't done that. In fact, you said you're not willing to do that. On the curb cuts at least. And we don't have the plan on the lift station trail. So how can we approve this? Because that was the recommendation from the plan and it's right in the report.
Our recommendations, or the full stack were to come with the 9, that it made it difficult to have one access point to each residential, to not at least have one access point to each residential lot. We've talked about and it did evaluate the traffic impact analysis in addition to that, and I have the numbers
I
with
think
me.
you're confusing them.
Oh, sorry.
So the cul-de-sac, the issue with the cul-de-sac, is that essentially it's barely meeting the requirements. And actually, it could be measured 1,000 feet. And so the thing that the council has talked about is, okay, at least creating an access point and figuring out a way to remove snow. That's one, that's what the one was. Secondary was the access onto the road B right now. That's access control and for things that can be approved preliminarily with the plat because it's what will get hammered out until the final plat is approved. Secondarily is zoning, that's a whole different,
That's the
all
next
that.
agenda item.
yeah. And so that's the secondary one. So if you guys want to approve the plat preliminarily, and then we can discuss it, that's, or not, I don't care. I'm telling you
Right now, the
direction.
motion is to
Yeah.
postpone it, so that's
Yeah.
what we're gonna have to vote on. So, does Alders have any more questions or comments?
Is this to postpone 9 or 10?
This is
Or
to postpone, just 9.
I guess I mean, I'm all for the postponement, but I also would really encourage both the plan commission and the developer to listen to utilities director of what they need to get access into their lift station. Because that actually is important to your development and it's important to a lot of different people. So that should be not only snow removal, but that should be a very, very high priority. And so,
Sure. We'll have further conversations with utilities on that. We thought 10 foot would be sufficient. If it's not, we can certainly figure out what that is and pass that on to you. Any other questions or comments? All right, so all in favor of the postponement, say aye. And anybody opposed? That motion carries. So then item number 10 is the
Zoning.
first reading for the zoning. So that one also came from the plan commission, all the person care level.
Okay, let's see if,
Let me put it up there.
I think so, because my internet is.
Give me a second to find it here.
Or ordinance, sure, here it is, ordinance 19 and 2024. This is a first reading, as noted on the resolution, and ordinance amending the zoning classification of a preliminary plat for lot 2 and 3 and outlot 1 of CSM 16445, located in section 31, town 6 north, range 11 east, city of Stoughton, Dane County, Wisconsin.
And it's the first reading, so is there anything you want to highlight on this one, Director Mutz Pritchard?
No, just, the multifamily residential on the, for but if you guys are, wanting us to look at the future land use map and go that direction, I can, go that direction. So I would recommend that this follow the preliminary plat though.
Yeah, we'd be coming back for a second reading, assuming that we have the preliminary plat things worked out for the next meeting.
Go ahead. Just make a quick comment. So on the zoning, I guess this is the process where you have the most, for like this stage of the process where you have the most discretion. So if there are any conditions or anything that you want addressed, it's know that at the front end, because then that can be attached as conditions of the rezone. Or also if you don't, you're not obligated to pass a rezoning ordinance, and we wouldn't have a basis for any sort of like denial or whatever, but so just things to consider, I guess, as we're moving forward. So if you have any comments or concerns, feel free to send them to staff. That way we can try to incorporate them into conditions prior to it coming back to the council.
And I think the concerns that were articulated by staff, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, echoed by the plan commission was that lot 13, that multi-unit. Other than that, I think we were okay with the rest of it. Alderperson Mayeski and then Butler.
An observation. So if issues with lot 13, which is multi-residential, and you think that may not be the best use. So if we, let's just say we pass this now, will they have to come back then and do a rezone on that? 13, if we decide that it's not the best use.
So it would depend. So you could pass the ordinance except for that lot. And I think it would go with like the current designation as rural holding or something along those lines. So the zoning designation would not change on that lot. So they would have to come back with a different.
That I don't want to see them having to do more work than they absolutely have to.
Mhm. So because we're dealing with many lots here with the zoning, that's what complicates it. So if the goal is to have all these approved at the same time, we'd want to have that MR lot.
With the stipulation that 13 would not be included in this.
Right.
I thought that part of the concern though, that Regina had brought up was the transition with the multifamily residential on the northeast side, correct? Right.
That was her concern. I didn't hear that concern at the public hearing or at the plan commission. So, I mean, the plan commission recommended basically the zoning with the exception of that lot 13. Now, certainly the council can do whatever they want, but I think it's a tough argument because what they propose on that multi-unit on the east side is consistent with what we approved in the comp plan amendment. And
I thought there was a percentages that we had put in the last comp plan, and I was just trying to find our comp plan of
Yeah.
number of multifamily to single family in a new neighborhood. And maybe I'm wrong, but I know that was discussed, and I can't find our comp plan because it's never easy to find.
so I think the question is does a comp plan amendment or a detailed neighborhood plan kind of supersede, I guess, the word of, I don't know if that's the legal word, the comp plan.
So consistency with the comp plan is not well defined, I guess, in the law. So things that you can look at for consistency are basically future land use plan. You can look at the specific elements, or like the written version of the comprehensive plan. You're supposed to consider everything, even though some parts may be conflicting. So basically, there's a specific statutory definition of like consistent with. Basically means it. I can pull it up here. One. So consistent with means that it furthers or does not contradict the objectives, goals, and policies contained in the comprehensive plan. So if there are policies or goals that are in your comprehensive plan and this is not consistent with it, meaning like, let's say we do have a specific mix of neighborhoods, whether it's like 60, 30, 10, something like that. That could be something we could rely on, but we would have to look through the comprehensive plan just to verify what those objectives are. Before I would feel comfortable, I guess, give an opinion on it.
Yeah, and I think that if we were going to do that, we should have had that conversation before we did the comp plan amendment. That's just my personal preference. Because to me, that was the appropriate time that if we were going to interject that, because we have other developments that have no multi. And it's all single family. Or are we going to say to them, no, now you have to put multi-use in your development because that's what the comprehensive plan says? I mean, to what end do you have to follow it, or is it a guide? It's not really an ordinance.
it's not a regulation per se. Your zoning ordinance amendments have to be consistent with it. So it just means it can't contradict your comprehensive plan.
So to get back to your point, Alder Mayeski, I think out of the planning commission, it came down to that one lot. Now, if the council wants to go to a different direction,
Well,
then
no, I'm just saying.
I don't know if
the
that's really-
practicality of it is that if we vote for this and then you hammer out that this is not a correct spot for this, then I just want them to have to go like, have it come here, have us vote on it. Say, yeah, it's good, and then come back in another couple of weeks and go, we gotta rescind it, and now we gotta vote on another thing. I wanted this one.
Sure. No, I think that's the ideal thing. I think what I heard Rich say is at the next meeting, if you wanted to, you could vote for it as is, or you could take that one lot and vote on everything with that one lot and leave it in its current zoning, or you could vote to change that lot to something else. I think that's something you all would have to do on. Maybe you're okay with it the way it's laid out. The planning commission said they didn't think that was ideal.
Well, I'm on the planning commission, and I don't think it's ideal.
So then the question would
And I don't
be
think
is,
it's ideal.
what is ideal? And if there's something that you think is more suitable, then we would want to make that part of the motion at the next meeting when we go through this second reading.
I guess what I would say, I would kind of echo what Alder Hirsch had, said. I'm trying in my mind to envision another area in the city where there's that large of a chunk of multifamily only. And I've heard from a couple of constituents, mostly my neighbors, concerned that there's just going to be giant block buildings dropped in. And I know that we're not doing, builders agreements or whatever, but I feel like since this is the time that we have our most control, this is when those concerns need to be voiced, because otherwise our hands are tied.
I think when we were having conversations, I don't remember if it was regarding the comp plan amendment or the developers agreement and the TIF request. There was always the understanding that there would be up to 400 units on that land there. So this isn't really new information. Now, I don't know if that's ultimately what they're going to propose. But that was really the understanding when we agreed to the TIF agreement, because they needed to be able to demonstrate what they were going to do there in order to create the increment to pay off the public improvement. So it's always been understood that 20 acres or whatever that is going to develop to be.
I guess like my question on top of that is like, why can't we just break up the 22 acres that are there for multifamily zoning and do 100 units or whatever, then some houses, and then like much like Nordic Ridges and like that point, because like, yeah, right now I'm just picturing just blocks, and you're like, that's what you're coming into when you're entering the
Go look at
city.
Cottage Grove.
Yeah, when you're entering the city from Madison or McFarland, whatever you think. I wasn't here when the comp plan was. through,
Well,
so-
I'm looking at the amendment, and it doesn't say that it's gonna be all mixed use in one area. I mean, or multifamily, is that mixed use neighborhood, mixed use corridor, planned neighborhood, it doesn't say exactly where. So when you say that we approve this, we did not approve that 20-some acres is gonna be multifamily and another part. So I think it's very misleading to say that.
I didn't say we approved it. I said it's always been understood.
Right,
There's
but
a
we
difference
never,
between
right,
understanding and
that's
approving.
fine.
You're putting words in it. I did not say it was approved. I said there was always an understanding when we went through the comprehensive plan update, when we did the TIF request and we negotiated the developers agreement, that there could be up to 400 units on these
Yeah,
20
we're
some
not
acres.
debating the 400
Well, you
units.
just,
We're
Because it used to
debating,
be a
okay, but
same
no, no,
approved it.
no, because you're saying it was, we did the amendment to the comprehensive plan, it was in there already, and it's not.
What do you have? Chris?
So this is what I would like to happen is that you guys have already, picked the, essentially the, plat back. I would really like your plat and zoning to go together. And that way, you know, so I am asking, that's what I'm asking for, if that.
I think that's what would occur anyway, because this
Yeah.
is just a first reading. What I'm saying is, I don't think it's fair that at this point of the approval process, that we're moving the goalpost. And that's,
We're not, okay.
yes, we are.
No, no,
Because it's always been understood, and it's always been articulated by the developers that this is gonna be the use of this site.
right, but they never said that they were gonna jam all the multifamily into one area and the residential in the other. That was never discussed, because that would have triggered every single one of them to say something. So that is unfair, and I'm just gonna leave it at that, because I'm tired of being attacked because I'm bringing something up. So I
You're bringing it
move
up
to
at the 11th hour.
postpone,
There's nothing
the-
that, you don't have to postpone it because it's the first reading.
okay, then
So
it,
we're not taking action on it anyway. The question is what do you want us to do between now and the next meeting? Because now I'm lost.
For sure, seeing other options for lot 13 would be nice. Cause I also, cause if that stays a cul-de-sac, I don't know how that operates.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone's concern.
Yeah. I would say I echo concerns about 13. And there's an opportunity with 13 being so close to the lift station that it can be reimagined along with those single family lots to see if it solves the problem. If 13 can provide the access needed currently, as we're kind of discussing and not thinking that it's an appropriate spot for multifamily, it is also then possible to utilize it to access the lift station that may then allow that cul-de-sac. But I don't know altogether if that's even a possibility, but I would entertain that in between the time for the first reading and the second reading. Secondly, I'd say that the multifamily on the right, although it seems like it's a big chunk, I also believe from my time seeing the proposals that there was planned to be a lot of multi-residential involved in this plat because it is a big plat. Figured that there would be some element of that. I think it behooves the developer with this feedback to think about how the multifamily is built and not to jam pack it into the lot, but to integrate it into the community, make sure it's something that looks reasonable, that looks that it is part of the community rather than what I think a lot of people are fearful of from what I'm hearing is that they're Soviet style block housing. And I think as long as they're not block housing, that we should be in a pretty good space to provide more options to our residents, more options to people who are working even at FTI. And I think that the current state of housing in Madison, the surrounding area, and Wisconsin, it makes it important that we provide as much as possible to the betterment of the community, but doing so reasonably and hearing out the fact that we just don't want something to be plopped in there that's cookie cutter. We want it to make sense. We want it to beautify this already wonderful space that it's going to be with park, already wonderful space that it's going to be with all the wetlands that are preserved and everything else that will encourage growth in our community. That's what I'd say.
CJ definitely reflected very eloquently and more thoroughly what I was gonna try to get across. But I wanted to ask the engineer and our project manager, I sense that when we saw the large swath earlier in this meeting, have we cut off or do you feel we have a clear understanding of what you guys are proposing for that east side? Because I found myself wondering, Ed, what is your reaction to the concerns about the larger box housing? Is there anything you can let us know now about that eastern side? Steve, you can comment first if you want. I'm happy to say.
Yeah, I would say that part of the process going through kind of laying out the neighborhood with the focal point being this very large community park, kind of restricted what remaining areas are left for the residential, when it was always intended to have business park and other uses that are comparable to SDI's development, stone trailers along 51. So that did kind of limit, with the idea of this larger park, what is remaining for residential that can both be for people that work there, as well as building off of the existing neighborhood. The type of development that's being considered is actually potentially less than 400 units. I guess I'll let Danielle speak if how much she wants to give it that, but the intent was maybe even garden style apartments. But the deal isn't done, but just letting you know it's not even the size that you're seeing just south of here, which was noted in the discussion about the zoning amendment of a larger building. So the intent is to have some housing of variety. But yes, that is a larger block of multifamily. But again, that was through the process with the community of where that was best located comparative to the south side. And typically the compatibility of where those are fronting on a single family is not the ideal frontage. The way it's actually laid out now is, I think, within the nucleus of a neighborhood, but not where it's facing each other with a larger format building next to single family. And so I think this is a better blend. It just looks harder to see it just by an aerial block of color. You'll get that character once it's built.
And I'm just going to second, because I think we are taking all the comments very seriously, and we have come back many times in the past, and we are willing to work with you, and I have answers to, I guess, maybe 99% minus the exact place where the snow will go from everything that came up at the question. In terms of the neighborhood, the company is building a very nice new headquarters. They very much want a lot of staying control themselves over what's going to be wrapped around them. They own the rest of the property. This has been very thought out. We are trying to make sure that the single family homes coming down Kingsland and in that area all feel blended, connected. They have trails. They're going to be brought into park system. As you move over where that multifamily is, it may be that we have to segment it out, but what we are currently working with is a interested party who does want to build a garden style type apartment unit that would not exceed 3 stories at this point, is what we're hearing. You have to also keep in mind the grading behind that apartment building is a very steep hill to the school and church. So when you're thinking of how that might affect the neighborhoods and things behind it, they're not going to rise above impact any of those neighborhoods to make them feel uncomfortable as though they have this humongous apartment building by them. The goal all around is to make sure that it is compatible for everyone. Again, we are working to manage and work within that development agreement. We have guarantees, we have terms to meet as well. And we're trying to do that in a very thoughtful way. How these single family will blend into the apartment units. Again, we are looking at it for it to be a smooth transition, to not have ginormous buildings as you might think in your head. It is not the plan. The goal is that this is a community. All the trails are going to connect under the highway. We've already been through that process as well. Trails are going to connect all through the neighborhood. They will actually wrap behind this building, behind the school and church, and go up and connect through the city of Stoughton. So there's so much positive, and I don't want to lose sight of that. And I want you to know that we're very thoughtful on this process. We are looking to actually make the city a better place and continue to build housing, which is an increased need everywhere. That is what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring that here. In terms of how it's going to look, it will ideally look like the headquarters to some degree and pull out some characteristics. So it blends, it looks right. It fits the need, meets the needs of the community, but also brings in businesses along 51 that support community, people who want to go to lunch, people who need services. The goal is to facilitate that as well. So
I'm happy to answer any more questions if you have on the phone.
All right, any more questions? Otherwise, more than likely, both of these items will be back at the next meeting.
One procedural question. If we have it noticed on the ordinance that it will get second reading November 12th, if we for some reason cannot, work through and get to that agreement, how does that affect the second reading if we want to keep items 9 and 10 together?
So right now, tonight is the first reading. So if it comes back, that's the second reading. But if we postpone it, like even tonight, so we check the box for the first reading. So we can do the second reading, either at the next meeting or a subsequent meeting.
Okay, I'm just saying in the header, it has it specifically in there as November 12th. Do we need to do anything to loosen that up just in case?
I don't think we need to have the council take action on it. We can adjust the date as needed. To
Got it.
accommodate whatever the.
Yep, just a procedure question.
All right, we'll move on to item number 11 then. Next, also first reading, from the Public Works. This would be our person by estimate.
This is amending section 78-702, Aaron 13 of the Stoughton Municipal Code related to paving of access aprons and installation. This was recommended by the Public Works, 6-0 vote, and I so moved.
It's our first reading.
First reading, sorry.
So, anything you want to describe on this one, or?
I can talk about it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so essentially what this is some housekeeping. You guys need me up there, or is it okay if I'm back?
Sure, outside voice.
Alright, so essentially this is some housekeeping. Right now it reads, paved to satisfy the Director of Planning and Development, a hard all-weather surface shall be maintained to prevent the transportation of gravel, dirt, or other erosion, yada, yada. We changed it to a concrete apron from the public sidewalk to pavement edge of adjacent street. If the property has no sidewalk, concrete apron shall be installed from the property line to pavement edge of adjacent street. Relief cut should be placed on the pavement for future sidewalk areas for the public works sidewalk policy. We were just getting a lot of questions. This is clearing up the language. I worked with Brett on getting it, and it went to public works.
All right, any questions on this one? Otherwise, it'll be back in a couple weeks. Okay, so we still have the budget, and then we have items involving Kettle Park West and JT Client. Do you want to go through the budget? We can do it at the next meeting too, can't we?
I guess I'm gonna leave that up to you folks. The finance committee has looked at the operating budget over the last 2 meetings. While we did not take a vote, they were supportive of using approximately 170,000 of fund balance to stay within the operational levy limit. But they were inclined to not stay at that level in subsequent years, and we're having to look at it more. So I guess I'm going to leave it up to you folks. Do you want me to go into the budget, give a high level overview? What would you like me to do?
I've heard it in finance.
Yeah.
3
times. So
I mean,
whatever
I'll
else.
chime in.
if there's no timetable on that,
We'll be
I
approving.
mean, there is in terms of approve it, but I mean, if we have a little bit of time, I think there are a couple of folks here who need the other items that are on the list completed, or on the agenda completed tonight.
It's 9:30 already.
Yeah, so if we can do this at the next council meeting. It's in the packet. You guys can certainly go through it between now and then and formulate any questions. We've already seen the utilities budget tonight, so you don't have to worry about that one. Unless you want to hear it again. All right, so is it okay if we go on to the next item? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. So the next item is item number 13, which is discussion regarding amendment to Kettle Park West Phase 2 Developers Agreement. And this one, we do have an opportunity for both of these next two to go into closed session, but I think before we consider that, we should hear from the developers. And so the first one would be Connor, if you want to come up here, you can see if I can. Here it is right here. So Connor's going to kind of give a background of where we are and where we've been, where we are, and where we'd like to go with the next phase at Kettle Park West.
Yeah, Kenny, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for having me here tonight. I'm Connor, Board Development Group, here to talk about the development agreement as it related to the second phase of Kettle Park West, which was completed last year, and the development agreement itself was negotiated in 2022. As a part of that development agreement, 8 of the lots highlighted on the map there were restricted where building permits would not be issued on those lots. That restriction was placed on those lots, largely due to a council decision that at the time, Jackson Street was the only improved street out of that neighborhood. The other road leading out of the neighborhood, being Oak Open Drive, was a failing intersection with its connection to 150 or Highway 51. Since that time, 51 has been improved. The 51 West development has been improved. So what was a single access point to the neighborhood or a single quality access point at Jackson Street is now improved to 3 quality access points to the neighborhood, which is one of the reasons we think that the deed restriction could be lifted on these lots. We're committed to completing the phase. So as a part of that, city staff wanted to see if those deed restrictions are lifted on those 8 lots where single family homes could be constructed on those lots. What would the next development agreement look like as we move towards phase 3, which is the extension of Oak Opening Drive to the southern border of the parkland. At this time, our intention would be constructing the road next year, Oak Opening Drive to the southern border of the dedicated parkland. We'd be including a temporary turnaround at that location for emergency vehicle access. The parkland that is there now will be mass graded. That way, whatever improvements are done there next are ready to go. Mainly, we would be maintaining the bases for public acceptance, but for turning it over to the city, making sure they're free of invasive species. And then we would coordinate the connection to Highway 135. There's one driveway that can potentially be relocated. And as the developer, as was done in the past in 2020, 2021, we continue the negotiations with that landowner for making sure that that driveway is relocated and is a good place. We're hoping that these deed restriction lot is something that would be amenable to you all now that we have 3 connections to the neighborhood as opposed to 1. And it's also important to continue to have housing inventory in the neighborhood. Things continue to progress well for them are in the neighborhood and they want to see additional housing available. So by releasing this just allows 8 additional single family lots to be constructed. So with that, please let me know if you have any questions and thank you for the time.
Did you just say you had 3 accesses?
So
Could you explain that?
yes, I can explain a little more. Could you go to the next page?
Sure.
So Jackson Street in 2022 will be the only improved connection to the neighborhood. Now that the Deer Point intersection is improved, as well as all the way north through 51 West, there's 2 access points or 3 access points to Highway 51. So with 3 essentially ways out of the neighborhood, we feel that the deed restriction on those 8 lots could be removed.
So it's Oak Opening, which is one street that then splits into 2 exits. So really, you could say 2 Jackson and then 1
I suppose
out of that
north of
neighborhood.
Deer Point, there's 2 additional.
Mhm.
Emergency vehicles could come from three different directions. I guess by the time you truly get to the boundary of the meadows, you have true access points. TIA, the traffic study had shown that is sufficient, for emergency egress. My understanding is that council thought, potentially that just the one in Jackson Street at that time, not being enough. And I do think that roundabout at the Deer Point intersection is very important. Prior to that being there, that was a difficult intersection. So, that one alone, I come from the north often when visiting the project site, and if I'm coming into Kettle Park West, I would take that one in rather than driving further south. So it's a very convenient way to get to the neighborhood.
Reeves.
Did I understand, the Oak Opening Drive to 138, that you'd have to get an easement from a neighbor, right? Or, I mean, is that, so what, help us remember what the issue is with that, because there's been some challenges, right?
With the driveway, if there were to be an acceleration lane going west out of town, there's a potential it could conflict with that driveway location. So the driveway location would be relocated to go and connect to Oak Opening Drive. So if that driveway were to be moved, we're working with the city to help coordinate that. And I had a call last week with the landowner, and they had questions about where would the driveway be connected to the Oak Opening Drive, and what they had thought was a roundabout, which is not really in the plans anymore. But we're starting to get those conversations started again. My understanding is that Oak Opening wouldn't be extended for the city's portion until 2027, just based on other road improvements that would be happening in 2026, which need Highway 138 to be a detour around. So I think we have time to negotiate that with the landowner to make sure that driveway is driving in a good way with connection to 138 from Oak Opening Drive. But we would like to see they'll need to build on those lots sooner rather than later, and construct our portion of Oak Opening Drive sooner.
So that connection to 138, is it definite, or was there?
Well, where's the state have to stake on?
Well, that's why I didn't think that had been.
That's a state issue.
Yeah, so essentially what it is DOT will not, I don't know how to say this, but won't negotiate with anybody but the municipalities. So even though we have an agreement in place, basically they have to, from what I was seeing when I was researching this, they have to bring the road up to a certain point, which that area is the area that we just approved for those duplex, like back lot, kind of, it needs to be farther, but not too much farther down than that. And then we as the city are the ones that have to construct the intersection if we choose to build it.
We have an agreement with the DOT for the access.
Yes.
But it would be our responsibility to connect from wherever they're leaving off to the highway. And we have the money to pay for that in our fifth project plan.
I thought, before you were mayor, and that we really wanted that access route to 138 before that went in, because of the emergency vehicles. Yes, now you have Deer Point Road and way up in Rutland done, but our police and fire are on the other side of, and EMS, they're on the other side of the city. So now you're possibly making them go up another 3 or 4 minutes, or even 5 if you have to go up to Rutland Done and cut across and then come all the way back down for a potential emergency all the way into that neighborhood if Jackson Street is blocked. Because Jackson Street, with all the Walmart and the hotel and everything, if there was an accident or a fire there and you needed other emergency vehicles to get into those back neighborhoods, we just felt that it wasn't prudent on the city councils for that neighborhood to be left without emergency services. Yes, I know we have 2 new ones there, but that's still, time is our lives too. So
Yeah,
I think the intent, I don't remember who was on council when we put this stipulation in, but I think the intention always was that those lots are not done until the access to 138 is put in.
I just address that. So the agreement it addresses two situations. So one, basically the deed restrictions would be lifted if the city has constructed that intersection, then they would have to extend Oak Opening all the way to that intersection at the time that they're doing the construction. If the city has not done the improvement to that intersection 138, then if the developer were to extend Oak Opening basically to the bottom of a park parcel, so not directly making that connection itself. So as long as they extend Oak Opening to a location that the southern boundary of a park parcel, they would have satisfied the obligation.
I don't remember that at all.
So that's in the agreement that if they do that, the building restriction would be lifted. So it doesn't necessarily require the connection. It requires it if we've already improved that intersection.
I thought one of the biggest hangups is that DOT was not going to allow that access point unless they get that driveway moved. And that was one of the big stipulations was I don't think that landowner was going to allow that access to their driveway to be moved. And so maybe through negotiations we've gotten that, but that was sort of a thing because the DOT did not want another opening on 138.
Yeah, so that's a separate issue, I guess. But the building restrictions or the permit restrictions could technically be lifted even if that intersection is not complete, just because they would have satisfied that condition if they extended to the south of that park parcel.
it's our responsibility to make the actual connection, not theirs. As long as they take the road that where it's at and deal with the driveway opening, they met their obligation.
Right.
And I think what I'm hearing is they would like to begin building the homes while they're constructing the road.
Essentially, by selling the lots this fall, homes would be built over the winter and next year.
And
Yeah,
then
but when is that road going in?
The road would be installed by 2020, end of 2025.
next year.
But that would we'd have to have the agreement with the owner or my.
Not at this point, because our obligation is to the south end of the park.
But we would need it
But
eventually. Right?
Yeah.
So you're
Somebody
stymied
Right.
there. You're stymied there because of the fact that if we don't have the access from the homeowner, we can't build. If we can't build,
We can build it, we just can't use it.
So what I'm
We
hearing
can't build, we can't
from
build our
Attorney
part.
Manky is that they're a second situation, that like, essentially.
And as long as they extend Oak Opening to the southern lot line of the park, even if there's no connection to Highway 38 off of Oak Opening, their restrictions would be lifted at that.
that's a nifty little trick.
Yeah.
Huh?
A nifty little trick.
Well, our previous lawyer.
Has it been discussed with fire and EMS?
Yeah,
Yes.
we did meet with Fire Chief Ramp, and we talked to Public Works was at the meeting as well. And Fire Chief he's okay with the 3 access points that's laid out here. Yeah, someday it would be ideal to have 4th. And it would be really convenient for the folks that live in the development, especially if they're taking a ride out and going toward Oregon. So we certainly would want, I would assume the council would still want to make that connection. They wouldn't have to, but I would assume they would want to.
I think according to our reasoning 6 years ago or however it was, I really like that access because I know what's coming next. You have those 4, 6 houses by the park that was restricted, and then there's parts down Oak Opening that was also restricted. So I know that if we approve this, next week they're gonna come in and ask for another restriction, because that's just the way it's been going.
I have another question. That you said, could you explain to me mass What did you say, mass grading? Mass grading, where would that be?
The park, essentially getting that in a pad ready situation where you could come in,
And build more houses?
with little work, build park shelter, whatever it might be.
You're proposing to do some of the work we would need to be done.
It's,
For
yeah,
the
it's
park.
essentially getting into where it's a well-drained slope lawn.
And then get rid of the invasive species. is the other thing.
On which side, the kettle side or the park side? Because the park side is supposed to be a bike track that isn't supposed to be, I don't think we want to grade it and flatten. So,
And I think that's one of those items where if we heard from the park department that they wanted a certain amount of soil to be left there, that can be.
Yeah, they
that
have
can
a
be done.
master plan.
we have a
Yeah.
master plan, so it needs to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, which would be part of the phase 3 plan. I guess my point is that, it wouldn't be left in a condition that would be unsuitable for development, essentially development of a park. So is how much soil needs to be left, we'd be able to work with you on that, but it would slope to drain in a proper way. That would be acceptable, and then that's outlined in the TIF agreement that the park would be mass graded, so it's a general term, but getting into a developable.
I don't think that's what we wanted.
As far as the pump track that was discussed there, that would most likely have to start off as a completely flat graded and then
Okay.
rebuilt back up to be that number.
Right.
That's completely different than the mountain bike track or other trail going up further to the
Okay.
west that goes up into the hillier.
Right, so a
Where
lot
we
of
wanted
that
to
park
build
was,
it, let it expand as well.
yes. Yes.
So I think the most important piece to this request, which I don't know how far we're getting into somewhere where we need to go.
well,
Yeah, I guess if you have any
Yeah.
questions specific to the developer
Yeah.
right now.
if we don't, we go in closed session and then we can discuss where you're at and what you would want to see as part of an agreement.
Could you identify where the temporary turnaround would be that you've mentioned?
Or the green dot.
Yes, so the southern border of the
Um,
park is right here.
um,
Turnaround would be roughly that location. One of those.
Oh, the dots on it?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. It wasn't, oh,
So-
sure. So it wasn't identified, so I was like, I don't know where you were
one of the
referring,
attach-
but
The attachment, you can see it if you zoom in, it's a little bit grainy on this print here, but, it's depicted at the, what is that cyan color in the
right
attachment?
here, I'm a little colorblind, so, you know, that's a little hard for me, but that's okay. That's all right. You never know, so.
So, but is that as far as they need to make it? Because the city is supposed to go from the end of the park all the way to
Correct. The end of the southern lot line of the park parcel.
Mhm.
okay.
And then my understanding is you guys have secured the land in order to be able to have enough right away to make that connection.
Yeah, that on, Access Day, if you were to go there, the plat shows where that roadway goes. I guess questions for me, or I guess in a closing way, what is the intent of the restriction? Is it to motivate us to develop it? Is it to get the connection? Because we're highly motivated to completing phase 3 as we're obligated to do so. And if it's, say, well, no, we need to maintain a restriction of 8 lots. Why does it have to be these 8 lots when we have a builder that's asking to build on these homes, the community that needs homes?
My recollection, it was to make sure that the road got extended so the connection could be made.
Right.
That's my recollection. It sounds like you're willing to do that almost simultaneously to building the homes. We can't actually make the connection in 2025 because we don't even have it engineered. And in 2026, they're gonna be doing 51, so this is the detour. And we'd have to put money in our CIP and then see how the TIF is performing and work with finance to figure out how we would pay for the intersection.
I guess and that's all fine, and I'm okay, but I guess for me to feel really comfortable, I'd like to see a commitment from that landowner saying that they agreed to the movement of their driveway, because it's all fine and good to say you put that road in, but if we can't seriously make that connection because that driveway has not been moved, then it's a moot point and we.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not
we've already
comfortable with
begun
that.
that process, right? So I think that in closed session, we can talk more about what that could look like.
Yep, I just wanted to let the developer know.
Yeah, I
That's
think
where I'm
that's good. Anything else?
I think just to the piece about the park, I would just encourage you to work with the city and the Parks Department before starting any work on it. Sure. We've kind of been burned.
Yeah, we have a master plan and, you know, we have to, I don't remember what year we budgeted to do that. Next year, the year after, for the. For T-Notch, yeah. We'll look and we'll connect you with Park and Rec and these three are on there and
Next year.
yeah, because we wouldn't want you to do any grading.
If we did
Have to do it twice.
budget presentation today, we'd know what.
Yeah, and we also don't want any trees removed that we weren't there to.
Yeah.
Had that problem in the past too, where very valuable trees just stay apart. Which that should not have been.
All right, any other final questions for Connor? Thanks for being here and thanks for your patience. I know we got late.
And not that you were
You're used to these times. All right, so the next item is, discussion and possible action regarding JT Klein tax incremental financing request. And on this one here,
Back up.
oh,
Are we going into closed session to discuss any of this?
we're gonna let, the representative from JT Klein give us an update and then we'll go to closed session for both.
Gotcha.
Yep. So the JT Klein, proposal is on 51 West on the west side. And the developers, the builders have been, working through Ellers on the pro forma for the tip request. And we're gonna get an update from, Kevin from JT Klein. And then when we go into closed session, we're gonna have a representative from Ellers, kind of lay it out for us on where we're at in the process. I don't know if we're gonna get to a decision point tonight, but if nothing else, we would at least want to give the council an update of where we're at in the conversation. You can smile up there, Kevin. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm Kevin O'Donnell. I'm Director of Development for JT Klein Development. We are looking at, as the mayor mentioned, that we are looking at 51 West in combination of adding 3 different multifamily lots or buildings to 2 different lots on those parcels. We have been working back and forth with Ellers to kind of secure our financing sources and secure all the different funds that we can get to build this project. Currently, we have been able to kind of pour out the process for 4% federal affordable housing funds from the Dane County Affordable Housing Funds. So that's a competitive process to get funds for that project. And we plan ultimately on finding out from our affordable housing funds from Federal Home Loan Bank here probably in the next week or so. Kind of wrapping up all those different sources to our project, we are hopefully anticipating on proceeding with this in the spring of 2025 with a combination of 60 affordable senior apartments and ultimately 72 family style affordable apartments. So, where we sit today, currently, like I mentioned, we are back and forth with Ellers to try to sort out exactly where we can kind of find the additional funding that we need to get this thing moving. And where we sit now, as you'll get an update later, is we do have a gap in that, unfortunately. And we are looking to ultimately increase that with some of the funds that are available through TIP. I don't know if there's any questions as far as kind of what the project sits or if there's anything that I can clarify now to kind of get anyone up to speed that isn't as familiar with the project.
Not that, I mean, I am familiar, but you say there's 3 different buildings. Are they each gonna have, you have one that's gonna be a senior, that's all just seniors, right?
Right.
And then the other 2, are they gonna all be workforce housing? Or are you gonna have some market rate and workforce housing within each of the buildings? Or are they gonna be separated out? How do you?
I can kind of walk through that in the building by building. So
Okay,
as of right now, we have on lot 5 of the 50 plus development, we have 60 units designated for affordable senior. 62 and older in that situation. We have 2 separate buildings. One of them will be on lot 5 as well, and that's a 36 family style. There are not any market rate units in that one. There's different AMI designations, ranging from very low income, which is the 30%, all the way up to 80%. Kind of hit a bunch of different thresholds, a bunch of different median incomes for both the county and the city of Stoughton. Separate buildings, I think, to answer your question, is ultimately there is a second building that's 36 units, similar AMIs on that one, that is on lot 2. So 3 different buildings, 2 different lots.
thank you.
So when you say 30% to 80%, so none of those will be market rated?
Correct.
And so you won't have any market rate at all?
There's not market rate in the unit.
Okay. All
So
right.
you're saying all affordable housing?
Correct.
At various levels?
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, ranging from that 30% to 80s. And if you want to know specifics on where we're at, I can go into details on those as far as different unit quantities.
Just a quick question on that request. I guess, can you give us just to refresh my memory on like the total request amount or like the per building request, per lot request?
Yeah,
Whatever makes sense.
we kind of lumped them all together, being the fact that 2 of these buildings are on one lot. So the total, you know, buildable is, so between the 60 unit, the 36 units, we have a total of essentially $4.3 million that we allocated in TIF over that 17-year TIF.
That was for the 160 and the 36.
2 36 units and 1 6.
Okay, okay, yeah, you said that was for all of them. Yep. 4.6 over 7.
Correct, yeah. So allocating, we've kind of had some back and forth discussions with Allers as far as what gets allocated to which project based on essentially the need as well. That kind of gets packaged together once you know kind of the structure to each building and ownership structure to how each one would actually be developed.
Yeah, where it gets a little complicated for us is the one lot is we've already have basically based on projections allocated all of the TIF between VORAC and the money we might actually need for the underpass and the improvements on the highway. So that's really what complicates the one lot. I can't remember.
Lot 2.
Yeah.
So,
And
36.
yeah, and so we have more flexibility on lot 5, but there's not as many units on lot 5.
96 total units on lot 5.
So that's where it gets a little bit complicated. So what we're trying to figure out, we can talk about with Ellers, is things like, well, how's it performing? Are we performing at or above the pace that we anticipated on lot 2? You know, does that give us more flexibility or not? And we don't have those answers yet. Maybe we'll get them tonight. I don't know if you have them answers yet.
Or should it?
So, those are things that we'll be talking about later. Because you've got them all lumped together, but the unfortunate reality is they're almost like 2 separate TIFs in a way, even though they're in the same district, because the money has already been basically, what's the word?
Allocated?
Allocated. Unless for some reason we overperform. If we're underperforming, we're in a bad place. But we believe that based on the amount of work that's already been developed out there and the increased values of the homes that are being built compared to what they thought to be built, I think we're going to be in a good place. But that's what we rely on ours to make those calculations for us.
It's my understanding, based on what I haven't seen all the different financial to it, that they are ahead on that. one of the things I will mention as well is I don't believe that the full available TIF for lot 2 has been allocated. So partial was allocated towards kind of the infrastructure of making it a buildable site. I do not believe that it's been fully allocated to the entire lot. So whatever is left of that, I do not know.
Yeah, we'll have to get clarification. I mean, the good news is a lot of the TIF money that's been allocated for public improvements to make both those lots shovel ready. So we've already invested a lot of TIF into the lot already. And so what you're asking for is something above and beyond that. And that's where it gets sticky because usually we focus our TIF on public improvements. This is a little different because one of the reasons you need TIF is because you're doing the affordable project. And the revenue from affordable project is less than it would be at a market rate. And that's what creates the gap.
I will add into that as well as the fact that, the city of Stoughton hasn't been able to kind of be made available for both 9% tax credit housing and 4% state tax credits, just strictly because it is a competitive process for scoring, and the scoring criteria that has been selected essentially rules out Stoughton for that kind of development, which increases the funds for affordable housing. So for us to be able to do it, that's kind of why we need an additional and higher ask. They seem, higher than a regular occurrence.
And one of the other challenges has been a long time affordable housing complex is Rosewood. And after the passing away of the owner, the family sold the buildings and the new ownership are going to market rate there. So we're losing 90 some units of subsidized housing in Stoughton, and some folks there have already had to move because their rent has been getting jacked up already.
What is Rosewood?
Pardon?
Over by, Whack.
On Jackson and Olson and Gordon for it.
Oh,
Or-
Rehab center.
And then there's a senior as well.
Yeah, that's a senior as well. So we kind of we had a need already, and if you could always talk to Cindy at the senior center, she can tell you the need and the waiting list. We're fortunate that we're getting Greenspire renovated, but that's not creating more units. At least it's keeping what we have. But we're losing the ones at Rosewood at the beginning in
why did they
2025.
change it? Why did it?
New ownership, they don't want to go through and do the workforce housing. It's a lot of work, right?
A lot of work. I believe they came to the end of their affordability period. They have a 30-year land use restriction on it being an affordable product. At the end of that, they decided to convert it to market rate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions for Kevin? But we want to at least get them in front of you so they can, before we talk to Ellers, you kind of hear where they're at. And then we can have our closed session and see what Ellers has to say about this one. Hearing no questions, thanks for being here. Hopefully you learned a lot tonight.
I certainly did. And I guess the only final thing that I would add to this is we are waiting on one final source for all 3 buildings, and ultimately, if that final source is not there, we don't necessarily have, we are proceeding with this project. We want to move forward with it, but we don't have that secured today. It may change next week. It may change
So that final source would reduce your TIF request? Is that what you're saying?
No, because we are anticipating that, or we have that in our model as rewarded.
Okay.
Because we can build source for this, that's part of what we're planning on securing. But
So if you don't get it, then your TIF request will go up.
it would go, well, we would have to reevaluate that point because it's a pretty substantial source to the overall deal. Kind of the mention that I have for is with us kind of finding these sources and allocating the different funds for this, we don't necessarily know that it is wise to make a decision if we don't have all the information for both lot 2 and our final source that's kind of in the deal. So
What's the timetable on that, do you think?
it's very loose, but it's end of October, which we're getting near the end of October.
Very loose, but
anxious as,
very tight.
everyone else.
Everyone's got their costumes picked out already.
Exactly. That's it. So,
Okay. All right.
I appreciate everyone hearing me out.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys ready to go into closed session? Wants to read the ditty. You wanna read it?
That's why this is going so long. You don't want it to end.
Please do this on purpose, so I put like 3 months worth of work into one night or what?
Right. So the common council may convene in closed session per state statute 19.85, parent 1, parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Common council may reconvene in open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in the closed session. And I would move for closed session.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alder Caravello. Andy, we need a roll call vote.
This is when it's bad, it's when they make big decisions when everybody's asleep.
Peyton,
Yes.
Hirsch,
Here, yes.
Lagaki,
Aye.
Yeah, I threw it off. My bad.
Caravello,
Aye.
Sherlucky,
Aye.
Wozniak Scanlon,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
Reeves,
Aye.
Abel,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Butler,
Aye.
and Mayeski.
Can we have a 5-minute break?
Sure, yeah.
Stand up.
Yeah. Boy.